Miles Morales is Spider-Man, with a cool new sword power. Welcome to the Comicstorian Full Story channel, where we take full stories from Comicstorian and put them here to give you a better viewing experience. Today we're covering the first 19 issues of Cody Ziglar's Miles Morales Spider-Man run from 2022. In this story, we see Miles fight some classic Spider-Man villains, gain a new Venom Saber power, fight against Carnage, and more. So sit back and enjoy Miles Morales Spider-Man.
It's been a while since Miles took a step back to catch his breath from all of the recent stuff that has been going on in his life. There were clones, the Spider-Man Beyond Corporation, and not to mention Peter Parker going full weirdo mode. But even with all of that, there's hardly been a moment of rest. And the villains of New York surely hadn't taken a break. As a speeding armored truck barrels down the streets of Brooklyn, Scorpion swipes away police cars asking, "What's all the fuss about? Can't a guy make an armed withdrawal?" However, when the truck begins racing towards a young girl on the road, it's Miles Morales who swings in, giving Scorpion a kick to the face while swooping in to rescue the girl from being hit, telling her, "You know, you really should look both ways before crossing." After setting her down, he asks if she's good. She tells him yes, and he tells her that he loves to hear it. "Now I gotta go beat up Scorpion. Be easy." He quickly jumps back into action, webbing up Scorpion, stating that the daylight robbery is pretty wild, even for him. And Scorpion says that he was gonna take a bus, but he was out of fare. So I figured, why not knock over a bank real quick? As Miles tries to lock him down, Scorpion lashes out with his tail, cracking Miles on the side of his head, and he manages to wrap it around Miles' neck. Scorpion says that he isn't the original Spider-Man, but killing you is going to be just as good. Plus, that suit looks better anyway. Thanks, but there's something else you should know about me. Miles' fingers begin to spark up. Oh boy. And then Scorpion feels the full power of a venom blast surging through his entire body. As he hits the ground stunned, Miles says that he has one more trick up his sleeve, and he begins to web Scorpion head to toe, throwing him into the armored truck. As Scorpion lays there groaning, Miles hangs upside down, telling him that next time, he might want to just take the subway. But another voice chimes in, stating that he may want to rethink giving out live advice, because as far as she's concerned, he's about 3 seconds away from getting his butt hauled off for violating the Powers Act. Agent Gao holds out her PD-NY badge as the other officers secure Scorpion, and she tells Miles that she's going to give him a friendly tip. He really doesn't want to mess with them. "Yeah, I've heard all about you guys. You crack skulls, push around folks looking after their own streets. Heard people who look like me get it the worst. That about right?" Gao then asks, "At what cost?" Miles wants to know, what does she even mean? She motions to the destruction that he caused with his battle with Scorpion. "Look at this! Destruction of private property, destruction of public property, destruction of municipal property. Your single act of vigilantism cost the city more than whatever money Scorpion would have gotten from the bank. Money that was insured, by the way. You did manage to save a girl's life, and that at least counts for something. But consider this your first and last warning, because there won't be a second one. Do you copy, Spider-Man?" Miles webs up, swinging away. Copy. Later, over at Brooklyn Visions Academy, Miles' school, he sneaks into the boys' bathroom and Genki tosses him his civilian clothes, telling him that he didn't know it was possible for someone to be this late. One more tardy and the teacher's going to bury him. Miles begins to change, telling him to cut him some slack. He had to deal with Scorpion and some mean agent lady who yelled at him. Just say he got stuck in the bathroom stalling it or something. And as Miles takes off his mask, Genki says, "Well, not with a shiner like that." Moments later, in the class, the teacher then says that he wishes he could detail how bad this is, Mr. Morales. That he has heard this song a dozen times, so rather than making excuses, he would like to see him and Mr. Lee here on time. Both Miles and Genki lower their heads, apologizing. And the teacher asks, why does he think that he's better than his classmates? Miles insists that he isn't better than them, but the teacher would like to know, why is it that he thinks he doesn't have to follow the same rules as everyone? Is it because he's here because he won the lottery? That because of that he gets a special privilege? Because he won the lottery getting into this school, someone else had to lose. He should be more grateful. A lot of kids would kill to be in his shoes and walk these halls. So sit down. Miles snaps back, asking, "What? I get condescended by you?" The teacher slams his book shut. "A few days of suspension will help you grow in your appreciation for this school. You can head to the office and inform them." Miles scoffs, grabbing his bag, and he steps out of the class as his phone pings him with a message from Tiana. She asks if they're good, and Miles tries to think of something to tell her about what he's going through, and he tells her, yeah, just going through some stuff. I'll hit you up later, just need a breather. As he leaves, he decides to take the long way home, swinging his way through the city when his phone begins to ring. He sighs that they're getting faster with this stuff, and as he answers, his mom and dad state that they're pretty sure that he knows why they're calling. Anything he wants to talk about. Miles tells them that there's been a lot going on lately, and it's like he's losing himself. Stuff that was easy before he can barely handle. The Spider-Man stuff, school, relationships. It's all like he's getting buried by everything, and he's just scrambling to stay afloat. He just wants to do good. He just wants to be good. But it's like he's getting pushed back from everywhere. Jeff and Rio tell him it's okay. He knew things weren't going to be easy, and that's why he has to lean on them to focus on the important things, that he needs to not rush. But don't misunderstand, he's still grounded when he gets home. He wipes his face, telling himself that it's all going to pass, and that's when he hears a buzz coming from the distance. When he reaches the source of the sound, he sees Bumbler breaking into a building, stating that he loves the upgrades. But I can't say the same about you breaking and entering. Bumbler spins back, firing his gun. That was a reflex! Please don't hold it against me. Miles dodges, telling him that it happens, and then he swings both feet towards, knocking Bumbler into the building. You should be careful, because just because a bee is down, it doesn't mean it's out. Ultimate attack, honey punch! As Bumbler swings, he hits Miles, launching him across the warehouse, and Bumbler looks at his hands. Holy crap, she wasn't lying about these upgrades. Miles then begins to get back up, telling him, all right, I'm officially over this. And he begins punching Bumbler over and over, with each hit hitting harder and harder. With a bloody and bruised face, Bumbler begins to yell, you won, man! Just stop hitting me! And as Miles pulls back for another swing, he pauses, realizing that perhaps his anger is getting the best of him. So he webs up Bumbler, telling him that he's sorry, but he's got to run. His heart isn't in this right now. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the girl that Miles rescued is walking down the street, and an older homeless woman on the sidewalk calls out, asking how was her day, Raneem. Raneem tells her, fantastic, Spider-Man saved her, how lucky was that? And the woman laughs. Is that why you're glowing? Raneem says that she has no idea, but she walks into her store, locking the door. She walks to the back where there's a dozen monitors all set up, all with images of Miles, both in and out of costume. Raneem looks at them, stating that he should enjoy the time he has left, because those of them who were left behind are finally going to have their day in the sun, Miles Morales. The next morning, Miles begins his day of punishment by doing the laundry, and as he begins to fold his clothes, there's a tap on his window. He looks back to see Tiana outside, asking does he have anything to say after ducking her last night. Miles lets her in, telling her that it isn't like that, he just got busy, and she tells him that a text would have been nice. She wants to know what's gotten into him lately. He's been so squirrely. He knows that he can talk to her. Miles says that he's just having a hard time as well. He's been feeling lost and doesn't know what to do. She tells him that she gets it, but he should try talking. Miles says that he's been thinking a lot about what happens if someone close to him gets hurt or something. Him and Tiana can handle themselves, but Genki is different, you know? Tiana begins to climb back out of the window, telling him, got it. You're having an existential crisis, and you think that absolves you from being a selfish jerk. Miles interrupts her, telling her that she's right. He has been a jerk for a little while. Just give him some time to collect his thoughts and he'll hit her up tonight, all right? She flies off, telling him, process how he processes. But she isn't the type to just sit around waiting for him. Miles sighs, falling back to his bed as she leaves, looking at the hole in his costume, beginning to wonder about Bumbler's most recent upgrades. He heads back out to where he fought Bumbler to see if he can get some clues, and as he sneaks in, he hears something rattle and quickly webs it up. Except as he attempts to web it, it's grabbed and he's pulled in as a voice tells him, is that so? He looks up to see Misty Knight, who tells him that she is trained with enough spider folk to see through web shooter tricks. You're the Brooklyn Spider-Man, right? I saw your name in the Beyond files. Miles tells her thanks, but not to be rude, but why are you here? She tells him that she's on the clock. But the quick of it is, a bunch of data centers have been hit, mostly stolen electronics and processors. Nothing big enough to get on people's radars, but enough for a private company to hire her and see what's up. So, is it your handiwork? Miles looks up from the wreckage of the previous fight, telling her that he did get into a fight with Bumbler. Bumbler's pretty harmless, but he got a serious upgrade, so maybe there's a connection. And since Misty's looking into it, Miles asks if maybe they should team up. The other Spider-Man can totally vouch for me. She sighs, telling him that he can tag along, but it's only a temporary team-up. At that moment, Miles' phone rings with Genki and Tiana asking if everything's alright, and Misty asks if he's good. Miles ignores both of them and says that he'll deal with it later. So, with that, Misty Knight and Miles begin their detective work. But barely an hour passes before Miles is so bored. At that moment, the thieves actually arrive, so the two of them spring into action. However, no sooner do they follow the crooks to start the battle than they find the crooks already having been taken out. Misty looks at one of the men stating that whatever happened, it happened quick, Spider-Man, and quiet. Poor guy still has his safety on. She looks at another one and realizes that the stab wounds look a little familiar. But at that moment, Spider-Man's spider sense goes off and Scorpion rushes in, knocking the two of them down. "This is gonna go a lot more different this time, punk!" Scorpion stands up stating that he should thank him before he kills him. "Because of our fight, I got some nice new upgrades, free of charge. The little birdie told me all I had to do was put you down." As the two of them get up, they're knocked back down, and Miles asks if they should call for backup, with Misty telling him that they are the backup. And while Miles and Misty deal with a superpowered Scorpion elsewhere, Tiana is sitting on a roof awaiting a text from Miles. As she gets ready to leave, there's a ping from him stating, "Today was crazy." Tiana says no problem, meet at the usual spot, and Miles responded with, "Turn around." She laughs, stating that he's really trying his luck, but then a female's voice tells him, "Luck's got nothing to do with it. I'm just simply here to take what is owed." Raneem flies in on a disc-like drone with several more following close to the behind. Raneem then uses the drones as steps to launch her attacks, as Tiana says that she doesn't know what robot circus Raneem flunked out of, but she can't wait to beat the answer out of her. Tiana quickly begins to gain the upper hand, but as the woman is thrown off balance, she activates a device on her wrist, and as Tiana goes to fly in, her wings suddenly stop responding. Tiana comes crashing down onto the ground, with Raneem jumping down, stating that she shouldn't underestimate her. She's about to make every single one of them know it as well. Later, Raneem begins to explain her upbringing and her reason for hating Miles so much. You see, her parents were immigrants that traveled to the States in search of the American dream. They were simply people with a simple life, but eventually she was added to that. At a young age, she had shown that she had a certain talent for when it came to electronics. Her parents worked hard to provide, and she hadn't a care in the world. Life was good, until it wasn't. Her mother had gotten sick, and even going to the doctors, there was nothing that they could do. After that, her father was never the same. He pretended, but the light in his eyes was gone. She did what she could to help out in the shop, but it wasn't enough. And then one day, her father said that she should put her gifts to a good use and apply for Brooklyn Visions. She planned it all out. She could be chosen and could be recognized for all of her hard work, for all of the hard work that her parents did. But like many things in life, it wasn't fair. And her entire life was reduced to a bet that she'd lost. Her entire future was decided on a lottery, a damn gamble. And you know who won? Who took what was hers? Miles Morales. Tiana scoffed, stating that she had a messed up childhood. "My condolences, welcome to the club. Trauma doesn't give you a license to inflict it on others." Raneem turns back, stating that she's not naive enough to think that she is the only person who had it tough. She's just one of the few that is brave enough to fix it. Her future was taken from her, and she will set it right. Meanwhile, back with Miles and Misty, Scorpion is swinging his tail. "Last time you got lucky, but I'm a brand new man now." Misty then says that the next lesson in detective work is to always keep them talking. These dudes love to spill the beans, Miles. Miles told her that the other Spidey says that too. Scorpion spins around using his tail to launch Misty across the warehouse, but as she gets up, she notices something that may have been left behind in the last fight. Miles does what he can to keep Scorpion away, until Misty opens fire with the Bumbler's gun that he left there. And then with a combined effort of Miles and Misty, they take out Scorpion. Gao then shows up, looking over at Miles, stating that he doesn't remember what she told him last time, does he? Miles looks at her. "You're not going to believe this, but I'm actually with Misty." Well, not with her, I'm working with her. So then Misty and Gao begin to argue over whether or not Miles should be involved, what's actually detective work, and what Misty has jurisdiction over. But eventually it ends with Misty threatening to call the mayor, so Gao backs off. He eventually gets a call from Genki, and he heads over to where Genki's located, but as he arrives at the location, something feels off. And that's when his spider sense begins to blare. Miles barely jumps out of the way, avoiding one of Raneem's flying discs, slamming into the wall, only to get struck by the others. He's flung over to the next building, and Raneem says that he isn't looking good. It's time to bring him back to his feet. Miles shouts at her, asking where's Genki, but the discs continue to knock him over. After being pinned to the ground, Miles looks up to see Raneem there, and he asks, "Who are you?" She tells him that she's the one that was left behind, the discarded accumulation of her parents' wildest hopes and dreams. She is the one lost among the scramble, another body lost to the rabble. Raneem then calls out that this is going to be Miles' reckoning, and Miles demands to know how she knows his real name. She tells him that she knows a lot about him, like he's the first child of Jeff Davis and Rio Morales, the Spider-Man and Brooklyn Vision Academy's most mediocre student. She slashes with a blade of electricity, nearly missing Miles' head. Miles quickly tries to retaliate by webbing her up, but the discs whirl around, deflecting the webs, allowing Raneem to swipe and cut Miles in the chest. She stands back up. You've coasted for too long, taken the spotlight, accolades, and opportunities, while the ones displaced were left with scraps. What are you talking about? Miles shouts. But Raneem tells him the lottery, his placement at the academy, the advancements that granted him and his family the chance that he was given. It should have been given to someone who actually needed it. It's not my fault I won the stupid thing. I didn't even ask for it. I can't control an act of randomness. And Raneem tells him that he doesn't seem to have a problem enjoying the benefits of it. Genki was right to be upset with him. Tiana too, surprised they even answered when she duped his number. Jeff and Rio must be proud of what a great influence you are on Billy. I'll be sure to ask them. Miles leaps off the ground shouting, "You're going to leave my friends and family out of this!" As Miles throws himself into Raneem, she redirects the weight, spinning him around, letting one of the discs knock him off, giving her the chance to strike him with a kick to the head. He coughs, asking who is she, so she tells him her name. But for now, he can call her the Envoy of Death. She attacks again, but this time with the assistance of one of the discs, causing a massive explosion that launches Miles' body off the ledge and into the river below. She waits, and he doesn't surface, and she tells Miles that this is goodbye. Later, Miles begins to open up his eyes as he sees an arm reaching into the water, grabbing him. Misty Knight pulls him up, cracking a joke that she only left him alone for 15 minutes, and he almost died. Before he could respond, he coughs up water. And Miles begins to pick out what exactly is going on, realizing that Raneem has his home address. He panics as Misty tells him that he shouldn't go rushing off into something without knowing who the person is or what she's planning. Him whipping headfirst into danger isn't going to get him anything but dead. It is going to cause a lot of folks grief. Misty reveals that at one point she got her hands on one of Raneem's discs and that they can use it to track Raneem back to her source of origin. But Miles says that he has to go check on his home first. So he flings off, going back to his house while Misty begins to follow the disc. She eventually gets to the location that Tiana is being held captive. And as Misty frees her, a mechanical tail from Scorpion comes to life, flinging at her. Meanwhile, across town, Miles hops over another building, noticing smoke coming out of where his apartment is, and he begins to panic, rushing over. As he gets street level, he looks up at the destroyed building and simply says, "Oh God." Raneem says that she's glad that he made it out alive. He's back just in time so that she can show him the end of the Morales family in person. Miles begins to get closer to the wreckage of the apartment, asking what did she do? And she tells him that she came to settle part of his debt, and now she'll collect the rest. She attempts to open with an attack, but Miles is furious, webbing up her discs, jumping into the fire in search of his family. Rio calls out and he punches his way through, seeing his parents and Billy huddled in the corner just out of range of the inferno. Miles begins to apologize, but Jeff tells him that this isn't on him. And then Miles grabs everyone, launching them into the street. Before Miles could even get his bearings, though, Rio shouts for him to look up and a disc shoots by, knocking Miles into the air. He begins to fight with the disc. "Can I get 5 seconds to myself?" And Raneem yells no. He doesn't get to save the day. He took her family, and now she's going to take his. Suddenly, the discs begin to stop focusing on Miles, and they turn their attention to his parents, Jeff and Rio. He screams at her to attack him, and as he swings, he creates an electrical sword of his own. Raneem asks how is he doing that, and Miles says, I don't really know, but this new power is going to prevent you from hurting anybody. The two begin to fight for power, with Miles pushing himself back, cutting away at the discs, and then into Raneem. She tells him that this isn't right, and Raneem backs away, yelling for him to just shut up. She rockets herself at Miles, telling him that he doesn't know anything about her, but what she's gone through, what her limits are, nothing. And Miles tells her maybe not, but he doesn't think that she's a bad person. So stop and listen for a moment. They bounce off the ground with Miles picking himself up, telling her that he's sorry for everything that happened to her, truly. But it was all outside of his control. But he's still sorry. It shouldn't have been like that. He was given a chance while hers was taken away, and it wasn't fair. She has to stop this. Raneem tells him that he doesn't know what it's like for two people to sacrifice so much, to work so hard, to give her a better life. She just wanted to return the favor. She wanted to be a good daughter. Miles says that she's right. He doesn't understand, and he never will. But what he does know is that his family isn't to blame. So don't take it out on them. Take it out on him. He won't fight anymore. Just leave them alone. Raneem starts to freak out. No. This isn't fair. You still get to decide? You still get a shot at redemption? You still get to take the high road and give me your pity? I can't let this happen. I'm never going to stop coming for you or your family or your friends. I will be the thing that keeps you up at night. And if you want to stop me, you're going to have to see this through. The discs all begin to light up, and Miles asks, what is she doing? But Raneem jumps on them, stating, we're going to call it even, a simple trade, a mother for a mother, a father for a father. What do you say? Does that sound fair to you? She goes into strike, activating her Pyrrhic protocol. Miles tells her to stop. He won't let her do this, and she declares that they're just going to go out together then. The discs all have a chance to fully charge up, and Miles slams his new sword into them, telling her that he just needs to overload the machine. With that, there's a massive explosion that throws Miles to the ground. Jeff and Rio run over to help just as Misty and the others arrive, asking if Rabble just blew herself up. Miles yells that he tried to stop her. He tried to talk her out of it. He couldn't. He wasn't good enough. He begins to close his eyes as Rio shouts for him to stay awake. But Miles says he just wants to rest his eyes. Everything goes to black, and Miles wants to know why his face feels cold. He starts to blink and he sees Misty and another woman that he doesn't know. He panics about his mask, but Misty tells him to relax. He doesn't have to worry about that stuff. The next time that he blinks, he wakes up in a hospital room, seeing his parents, Jeff and Rio, by his side. He hugs them both, and Misty walks in telling him that she's sorry to interrupt. She needed to check on her favorite pain-in-the-butt detective in training. Rio tells her that she did them a real solid on this one, and Misty says that it's all good. He's a good kid. Besides, can't have her intern banged up and out of the home. Miles thanks Misty, and Misty declares that Jeff and Rio raised one hell of a son. He's got a new shot. He might actually become a detective now. Elsewhere, Agent Gao walks through her holding block and stops at a cell, telling the inmate that they wanted her attention. They've got it. Their disappearing actor's cute enough to warrant some internal discussions. So she's bringing them an offer to finally put those skills to good use. Scorpion laughs. That's the thing about me. I'm always interested in new job opportunities. A few cop cars gather around the corner diner, with the sergeant on the scene quickly calling in for backup. I don't give a crap about the traffic. That's what sirens are for. We've got Cletus Cassidy in there. Send every team you've got, she says into her radio. Someone looks up into the sky and shouts as Spider-Man swings down, landing on the roof. But Miles has faced Cletus before. Memories of when he was overtaken by the madman during the Absolute Carnage event fill his mind. I better go in dark. Give myself a fighting chance. He thinks to himself as he goes invisible, his camouflage hopefully protecting him from a surprise attack. He begins to sneak through the halls of the building, unaware of the twisting walls behind him that show Carnage's face. Outside, a SWAT van screeches to a halt in front of the diner, and Agent Gao gets out. She motions to her men, who are packing extremely heavy firepower. I want everyone looking the part out there, guys. Slick, professional, and above all, lethal. She calls to her men as she takes charge of the scene, ordering Sergeant Ahmed to push her people back as the hulking villain steps out of the van. Inside, Miles is sneaking through the shadows into the diner, but he stops suddenly as the lights come on and he sees several people sitting and eating. The cook looks up in annoyance. I'm trying to run a business here. Would you mind getting your paw prints off of my ceiling? He growls. Miles drops to the floor, confused as to what is going on, but he is called over to the corner, where a bespectacled man sits. I hope you don't mind, and took the liberty of ordering for you. I'm Ken, the man says, and he motions to Miles to sit. Hey Ken, you mind telling me what's going on here? Miles asks, sitting down, pushing away the plate of French toast that he is offered. I'm afraid Mr. Cassidy didn't share the particulars of his plan with me. Ken tells him, but Miles can't sense Cassidy getting out of the booth behind him. Cassidy's jaw elongates as he opens his vicious mouth wide. You smell different than the other bug. Less tragic. Let's see what we can do to fix that! Cassidy suddenly growls as he lunges forward, biting into Miles' shoulder. Miles screams as he feels the jagged teeth biting deep into his flesh. Meanwhile, outside, Gao turns to the villain as he gets out of the van. Are you ready to go to work, Scorpion? Yeah, I watch your team 6, Agent Gao. But I'm telling you, I'm here for one reason and one reason only. And that's to put an end to Cletus Cassidy. Back inside, Miles shoots a web into Carnage's face, grabbing a hold of him, throwing him over his shoulder. Carnage snarls, ripping the webbing clear. Were you raised in a barn, Miles? Didn't anybody ever tell you that it's rude to come between a man and his meal? Miles tries to leap away, but Carnage's tendrils lash out, slamming him through a wall. Miles is shocked as he looks up at Carnage's new suit, which basically looks like he threw up all over Iron Man. Struggling to his feet, Miles turns his head as a cook tries to get his attention. Bro, you gotta help! My name's Dominic! The cook hisses. Miles moves quickly, grabbing Dominic, pulling the man to safety. Meanwhile, in the diner, Ken motions to the hole in the wall. You're not letting him leave, are you? Is that a part of the plan? And Cletus just smiles. I'm not letting him leave. I'm baiting the hook. Cletus tells him as he turns his head, sensing Agent Gao's team entering the building. I do believe another course has arrived, Cletus says as he licks his lips. The team pushes through the entryway, weapons up and ready, but someone is whispering to them from all around. He's here! The point man shouts as Cletus seemingly springs off of the walls, his symbiote growing around them. It pulls away their weapons, stabbing and slashing across them. The team tries to hit him with sonic weapons, but it just pushes Cletus back. Gunfire continues to erupt from the team as Scorpion comes rushing in. Hiya, Mac! Good to see you back on your feet, pal! Cletus says with a smile, and Mac tries to hit him with his tail, but Cletus appears behind him, slashing him across the face. No hard feelings about a last tussle, right? Don't they say that forgiving is divine? Cletus asks. Mac roars in anger, his tail lashing around until he realizes that he's all alone. He looks up to see Ken sitting in a nearby chair, watching the fight. Huh? Thought Cassidy didn't leave any survivors. Max says, but Ken explains that he isn't a survivor, that he was once a serial killer that believed himself to be an autiste. But he realized that Cletus was the true artist. He's about to paint his masterpiece, Mr. Gargan. I'd urge you to run, but he's already here. Ken says, drawing Max's attention as Carnage is sneaking up behind him. Meanwhile, Miles is leading Dominic to the roof. In the floor beneath him, he hears the gunfire, and Max eventually screams in pain. They continue to move forward with Miles kicking in the door to the roof. Come on, we gotta go this way! He leads Dominic to the edge, blood still dripping from his wounded shoulder, and he tells Dominic that they're going to have to jump to the next room. Trust me, Miles says, holding out his hand, which Dominic reaches for. But Dominic's hand suddenly twists into the Carnage symbiote. If you insist, he says with a smile, slamming Miles into the ground. Miles struggles up in shock. Cassidy? He gasps as Dominic shifts into the red-headed psychopath. Miles shoots his webs, dragging Cassidy to the ground, but another has appeared, slashing him across the back. Hey, Miles, you ever feel like you're out of your depth? He says with glee. But Miles refuses to give up, trying to punch out. But Carnage catches the blow, opening his mouth wide to finish off Miles. Peter, I'm sorry. I tried. Miles thinks to himself, knowing that he has reached his end. But Scorpion is there, slamming Cletus away with his tail. Get off of him, you freak! Max snarls, and he turns, helping Miles up. You did real good, but you gotta tap out now. Mac tells him, and Miles is simply confused. Why are you helping me? He asks, and Max smiles. Honestly, I wasn't planning on it. I thought you were the other Spider-Man. But he suddenly gasps as blood begins to spill out of his mouth as Carnage's tendrils stab through his stomach. Carnage lifts him into the air, more tendrils stabbing through him. Good. I'm sorry. It's all on you. Scorpion gasps as Miles struggles up, electrical energy crackling in his hand. You don't know when to quit, do ya? Carnage asks with glee, but Miles leaps forward, slamming his Venom Strike into the power core in Carnage's center. Sparks begin to fly as Carnage screams in pain, dropping Scorpion. "What have you done, kid? I'm gonna get you for this! Peel you good and slow!" He bellows, and on the streets below, everyone looks up as the building suddenly explodes outward. Everything tumbles around them as Miles and Mac drop to the ground. The building is crumbling, covering them in debris. And after a few moments, Miles looks up. Is everyone okay? Are we good? He asks Scorpion, and Mac growls at him, explaining that there isn't a web, and they aren't working together. He looks up as the debris begins to shift around him. "Wait, what's that sound?" he asks, and Miles rushes forward, pushing Scorpion away, catching the building as it continues to fall apart. He gasps, trying to hold it up. "Scorpion, my guy! Don't think I can hold an entire building forever! Open to your pitches right about now!" Miles yells as more debris begins to push down on them. The ground begins to fill up with water. "All right, I got an idea," Scorpion says, swishing his tail back and forth. The tail then lashes out, grabbing Miles, pulling him free of the debris before it can squash him. "Thanks, man. You had me going there for a minute." Miles tells Mac that they need some help on this one, and the two begin to pick their way through the destroyed building, arguing over what they should do. They eventually come across an EMT who's trapped beneath the rubble, but Mac moves, stopping Miles. "Are you stupid or something? Cassidy already got us with one symbiote switcheroo. I'm not taking no chances on that being another Cletus freak clone." But Miles stands in the way, insisting that they need to help everyone that they can. Meanwhile, topside, Agent Gao is staring at the massive crater that was created by the building exploding. She sighs, knowing that they can't allow Carnage to escape and continue to kill. She rubs the bridge of her nose. "Every second that we waste is another potential body that Cassidy catches," she says, and reaches for her phone, tapping a button. "Send them in." Back in the crater, Mac finally agreed to not killing the woman, and with a growl he turns, continuing to go through the rubble. The woman thanks Spider-Man for saving her, and they get back to work trying to dig it out. They find another survivor, this one a member of Agent Gao's team, and Max steps forward to attack the person again, but Miles again holds up his hands. "Dude, we've been over this!" Mac quickly agrees this time, and the trio continue to help getting the debris off of the agent. Water is pouring steadily down on them now, with Miles aware that they are going to be completely submerged soon. He glances around, finding a massive sewer main. "All right, I got our way out of here." He insists on Mac breaking the water main, filling it up with even more water so that they can use the pressure to get them out of the crater faster with it. "You got some stones, kid, I'll give you that," Mac shouts, and they all shoot up into the air using the rush of water from the sewer main to rapidly fill the space, and they all land on the streets above. Agent Gao moves forward, quickly ordering the police to arrest Spider-Man. "Oh, come on, man!" Miles snaps as electric cuffs are slapped on him. "How many times do I gotta save the day before you're gonna give me a break?" he asks, and he turns to Mac, hoping the criminal will stick up for him. "Actually, ma'am, I think we could use this runt. He did good back there. Building going boom wasn't on account of him. It was all Cassidy," Mac tells her. Meanwhile, the EMTs are trying to take a look at Agent Scott, the other survivor, but the agent suddenly transforms before their eyes. "Bacon's back on the menu, boys!" Carnage snarls as he rushes to finish off the captured Miles. "Cassidy can duplicate himself now?" Agent Gao asks in surprise. Miles rushes forward, breaking out of his own cuffs. "It's more like he can possess folks!" Miles shouts, and as he's about to fight with Carnage again, a blast of energy and arrows hit the symbiote, dropping it to the ground. Miles is confused, looking back at the newest members of Agent Gao's team. "Sorry, where are our manners? Let me introduce New York's newest anti-vigilante task force, the Cake Killers," Taskmaster tells him, motioning to his team of Electro and Hightail. "Hiya, kid. Long time no stab." The team then quickly moves forward, defeating the symbiote, dropping it to the ground. Agent Gao turns to her team, explaining what Miles said about Cassidy taking over various individuals and creating possessed clones. And she ends it with explaining that that's why Spider-Man is going to be joining them. Miles tries to argue, but Gao looks at him. "Here's your options, kid. My Cape Killers can cart you off to jail, or you can be their little symbiote whisperer, and I'll consider it time served." Now, where is Cassidy hiding? But far below the city, in the symbiote hive known as the Spire, Cassidy is sitting upon a throne looking at Kenneth. What's the point of that stunt? "A little sleight of hand. Spider-Man couldn't help but come to the rescue, and while he was distracted, we were able to slip away, unpursued." To do what? Hide? Lick our wounds? "No. Spider-Man is going to pay. But first, whatever he did was messing with my suit. I gotta sort it out. And when I do, this whole town's gonna remember what it's like to have Carnage's claws at its throat! Back in Manhattan, Cletus finishes with his upgrades, deciding to stretch his wings as he flies over the city, telling them, "I'm starting to feel like my old self again! The more you make me bleed, the badder I become!" While Miles and Scorpion get back towards the ground, Taskmaster and Electro take their shot as Taskmaster lets loose 3 explosive arrows that try to give the other 2 some cover. Cletus turns his attention to them, telling them, "That was pretty cute that you think that would work." Taskmaster asks Electro if she can pick up some speed, and she tells him sure. Just gotta let go of some dead weight. And she lets go of Taskmaster. After dropping him, she flies towards Miles, telling him that Gao told her that they have similar electric powers. Miles tries to argue against using it with her, but she finally convinces him, so he funnels his Venom Blast into Electro to charge her up, and then she turns, releasing it into one giant blast. The shot hits Cletus dead on as everyone waits to see if it was effective. And then they see Cletus peering through the smoke. "If you wanted my attention, you sure as heck have it now!" Suddenly, red tendrils shoot out, slashing and cutting into Miles and Electro, splitting them apart and flinging them across the city. Hightail catches Electro, while Taskmaster stands up. "That's what you get for dropping me. But now it's time to see if this little rocket that I stole from the dusty old Stark building can help." With Cletus's back turned, Taskmaster fires the RPG, not even knowing what he's firing because he just picked up a random weapon. And Cletus turns back, swatting it away. "Shooting a guy in the back is low, even for you, Taskmaster. That's why I prefer to stab him." The rocket then ricochets, flying into a nearby building, and people begin to scream for help as Hightail pushes Taskmaster out of the way, telling him, "You just brought down the whole building!" Miles swings in to help with what he can, but Hightail runs up to him. "I talk fast, so listen. I toss, you catch. Do it." People are then being tossed out of the building as Miles creates webbing all over to catch the survivors. Once they're done, Miles takes a deep breath, laughing. "Wow, okay, Usain Bolt, I see you." And Hightail says, "This does not make us friends." And that's when Miles, Hightail, and Scorpion attempt to do what they can. But with every inch that they make against Carnage, Cletus takes a mile. He begins laughing. "The chase is part of the fun! Hell, it's all of the fun!" He whips a tail at Hightail, but Miles jumps in the way, taking the hit, asking if she's okay. Cletus tells him, "I wouldn't be worrying about her, kid." At that moment, something pops up on Gao's radars, and a voice comes over the comms. "I'm not one to eavesdrop, but my ears just wouldn't stop burning." Tony Stark flies in with his Iron Man suit, firing a sonic disruptor to keep Cletus away, looking down. "Hey, Spidey, looks like you got yourselves a little Carnage problem." Once everyone is clear, Tony turns his focus back to Cletus, and his attitude changes from playful to serious. "I had a long time to prepare for this after you ran off with my tech. You steal the Extreme Biote, and you turn it into this monstrosity? Who better to slay the evil dragon than a knight in titanium armor?" He jumps in with an electric spear, stabbing Cletus in the mouth, allowing his suit the time to start transferring power. He then tells everyone to clear the way. He wants Cassidy to feel this! And as soon as he finishes charging, he releases all of that stored energy straight into Cletus. As the smoke clears, everyone can see the smoldering remains of what Cletus was. And Miles asks, "Did we win?" Hightail tells him to just take the win. But at that moment, there's a loud clang as Tony slams on the ground behind them. Miles asks if he's okay, and Tony explains he needs a little of that zappy trick from the Venom to get him back up and moving. With that, Miles shocks the suit, telling him that it's pretty much the last that he has. But Tony tells him, "You keep this up, you might make my top 5 spider people list." "Wait, do you really have 5 of..." At that moment, Miles' words fade. Everyone looks back to see the red tendrils stabbing and piercing Miles. And Cletus tells them, "You have got to learn to stop turning your back on me. But for now, I'm done with the small fry. I need something bigger to sink my teeth into. I need to spread this thing far and wide. I need to spread real carnage." As Cletus begins to fly off, Miles coughs. "That was stupid of me, so stupid. I should have never let my guard down." Tony grabs him. "Stay with me, kid. We can't have you dying that easily." Hightail runs over, asking if they can fix this. Tony tells them that they have good news and bad news. Bad news is I never went to medical school. Good news is I'm smart enough to create programs that went for me. Stay still. This is gonna sting. A lot. He reaches down, creating a nanotech cast over the wound. Miles asks, what is it? And Tony explains that the nanite clusters will help speed up his recovery. But what they're creating isn't so much a cast. You should probably just call it a suit. Miles sits up looking at his suit, seeing the Iron Spider outfit now with 4 extra limbs. A short while later, Miles and Tony are speeding across the city, with Miles cheering about how good he feels in the new Iron Spider suit that Tony gave him. He swings through the air, hitting the gigantic dragon monster that Cletus has become with a laser blast from his new spider arms. I see you were smart enough to bleed out when I stuck you like a pig! Cletus roars, opening his mouth wide, firing a blast of energy at the pair of heroes. But Tony leaps out of the way, blocking Miles from the attack with his energy shield. Behind me, kid. This is the easy part. Shield's gonna hold, but I don't know if we're gonna stick the landing. Tony shouts as they fly through the air, slamming into a nearby building. A moment passes and the pair struggle to their feet. See? Easy. Tony groans, grumbling about not wanting to be thrown into any more buildings, and he orders their team of misfits to gather around. He orders Scorpion and Hightail to cover them while he and Spider-Man are going to hit Carnage hard enough to crack the symbiote Iron Man suit so that he can use the special EMP that would fry Carnage's circuits. Your plan is crazy as hell. You know that, right? Hightail asks him. Wait, does this mean we're real Avengers now? Scorpion begins to wonder, and Tony nods as they turn back to Carnage. All right, my temporary Avengers, time to slay a dragon, he shouts as he draws his energy sword and shield. Make me bleed, Stark! Show me how it's done! Cletus roars, with Hightail rushing forward, punching the monster in the face. She dodges out of the way as Scorpion hits him with another energy blast, and Cletus merely shakes off the attacks. If you want me, you're gonna have to earn my blood! Cletus says before reaching back, letting out a massive roar. The ground shakes with the sound, and the heroes are forced back. What kind of scream is that? Hightail shouts, but Miles looks behind them as a crowd of symbiote-controlled people are rushing through the streets, called to their master. Guys, I don't think that was a scream. I think it was a dinner bell, Miles says as the people rush forward, screaming Carnage's name as they attack the heroes. Over their head, 3 symbiote-controlled Iron Man suits roar forward. And over their heads, Agent Gao is watching them all from a helicopter, with Red Goblin unconscious on the floor, but struggling to his feet. Cletus is gonna tear apart the whole damn city. You're up, Red Goblin. Little Normie, the child within the symbiote, nods his head, leaping into the city. Yes, ma'am, he shouts, Kenneth smiling. Guess our final player is about to take the stage, he whispers. Below them, Tony and Miles are engaging the Iron Man suits that have been taken over by the Extremis virus, one of them rushing Miles, with the helmet flipped up to reveal the symbiote strands. Come back to us, Spider-Man. Come join our symphony. The creature growls in the voice of Cletus. Close by, Scorpion and Hightail are fighting against a horde of people controlled by Cletus. Yo, it's getting pretty cramped in here. Do one of them speed blitz things, Hightail. Scorpion shouts, but she shakes her head, explaining that there isn't enough room. What good's a speedster who can't speed? Scorpion grumbles, but above them, Red Goblin drops in, knocking a crowbar-wielding man away. Cassidy isn't hurting anyone else, Red Goblin states. Spider-Man suddenly comes flying by them, slamming into a truck, having been thrown by one of the Extremis Iron Man suits. Tony lands next to them, informing the others that they need the ground cleared. They're making the final assault. The rest of the heroes clear out enough room for Hightail, who suddenly leaps into super speed, knocking out a large number of the horde. You couldn't just do that from the start, Scorpion says with a smile. Tony and Miles leap back to fighting the Iron Man suits, Miles' new Iron Spider armor allowing him to quickly dodge their attacks and keep them busy enough for Tony to finally hit them with a sonic blast that destroys the symbiote pieces that were controlling them. The armor then falls to the ground, empty once again. Well, that was fun while it lasted, the Cletus Cassidy Dragon Carnage says with a smile, but it's at that moment that Tony realizes that Cletus is now one with the Extremis virus, that he is bonded with it, and there might be only one way to finally stop this fight. Over their heads, Kenneth looks up as a piece of the Extremis symbiote splats onto the side of their helicopter. While Gao is distracted, he manages to slip free of his cuffs, and he grabs a hold of the symbiote, allowing it to bond with his skin. With maniacal laughter, he reaches out, grabbing a hold of the pilot. grabbing the stick and pointing them at the ground. You don't understand what's waiting out in the stars. Cletus Cassidy's the only one who can stop the Carnage symbiote, he shouts to Gao. On the ground, Miles looks up as a helicopter is now flying through the air. Gao is thrown clear and Spider-Man leaps up to grab her as the chopper crashes hard into the New York streets. Kenneth manages to struggle free of the crash, staggering over to Carnage. Cletus, I got your message. I understand my purpose now. The Carnage symbiote is waiting out in the stars. Kenneth gasps to his master. But Carnage has had enough of the fanboy reaching down for him, knowing that his piece of the symbiote will heal him. Thanks for the jump, Kenneth. Nearly back to full power. Cletus tells him. Kenneth is confused by this turn of events, but Cletus reaches down, stabbing him through the chest. Internship's over, Kenneth. Hope you enjoyed the lessons. Cletus laughs as he absorbs the serial killer. You always knew it had to end this way. Cletus laughs, and Tony and Miles are there hitting Cletus with everything that they have. Tony flying around the monster, but a tendril reaches out, destroying his gauntlet. Enough of those little Stark toys! Cletus growls, but Miles leaps at the monster, swinging through the air, spinning around him. He avoids Cassidy's tendrils as he picks up speed until he leaps into his side, knocking him to the ground. But Cletus is on his feet quickly, his tendrils lashing out at top speed, knocking off some of the Iron Spider arms as he presses his attack. It's Miles who flips over another attack, his fist beginning to glow with energy. This started with a Venom Blast, so I'm ending it with one! Miles shouts as he slams his fist into the monster. The blast tearing up the street around them, smoke filling the air. And when it clears, Cletus is struggling to his feet. That tickled. He grunts, but Miles has done his job. He leaps out of the way as Tony Stark comes barreling in. Iron Man, now or never! He shouts, and Tony slams into Cletus, burying himself into the monster, attacking his EMP. Cletus roars in anger and pain as the EMP rips apart the Extremis virus, destroying him. And as the smoke clears, Miles struggles over to Tony. Did we do it? Is Cletus gone? Tony nods, his body moving stiffly. Completely fried my suit, but I'd say we got him, kid. The rest of the heroes look around as Cassidy's horde comes back to their senses. They're no longer controlled by the madman, and Tony explains that he isn't sure if Cassidy will stay gone, but he is at least defeated for now. You did good out there, he tells Miles, putting his hand on his shoulder. I'm still taking the suit back, though, he says as the Iron Spider suit is reabsorbed into his armor. The duo leave Agent Gao and her men to clean up the mess of the city, with Tony dropping Miles off at his apartment. There, he's greeted by his family. He hugs his baby sister and he tells them that everything is going to be all right. But back in the city, in the shadows of the destruction caused by the battle, a pile of reddish goo begins to shift and move. For the briefest of moments, a face can be seen at its depths. As the group moves through the festival, discussing all of the food that they're going to eat until their stomachs burst, Miles' spider sense goes off. But just as a drone is flying overhead, Miles admits to his very concerned girlfriend that he has been jumpy since the fight with Carnage nearly killed him. She tells him that he should speak with someone about his feelings, admitting that she herself has seen a therapist about everything recently, and it's really helped her. But the night continues and the group of friends are just having a great time, taking pictures in their superhero costumes and dancing to a local band. Unknown to Miles, a group of robbers is currently breaking into the former Beyond Incorporated tech warehouse. Seems a waste to just let a place stocked with this much tech be mothballed. The leader notes as the group shines their flashlights down the dark warehouse. They finally arrive at the massive door and they begin the work of unlocking it. The prototype should be inside. Heard you can mess around with people's memories, the boss says. As one of the goons works on opening the door, the others provide security, but one of them is suddenly grabbed and pulled into the shadows. Contact! The robber shouts, opening fire into the darkness. And then another one is snagged and ripped away, with the final remaining robber trying to psych himself up. Remember your training, he says to himself before continuing to fire into the nothingness around him. Come and get me! He shouts, but hands suddenly grab him from behind. Well now, if you wanted to say hello, I figured we should do it face to face. Now don't you go dying on me too fast. Hobgoblin cackles as his gloves begin to glow and the robber's face begins to burn away. Meanwhile, back at the festival, Miles and his friends have done exactly what they said they would do, and they've eaten way too much food. The group sit around groaning at their full stomachs as they prepare to head to the concert that will end the night. But Tiana tells Miles that she needs to hit the bodega first, and the group splits up. As the pair walk away from the festival, they continue to talk about Miles' problems, his mental issues with his spider sense going haywire, and his fears of things like dying at the hands of Carnage, only to be saved by Tony Stark. But that's when Miles' spider sense goes haywire again. Is it another fake out? Tiana asks, and Miles shakes his head, pulling off his mask. T, please tell me you brought your suit, he says as he pulls on his own mask. She nods, pulling out the Starling costume from her backpack. Of course. Good, because I think this might be the real deal, Miles says as they move through the streets. Meanwhile, back at the warehouse, Hobgoblin is rummaging through the old Beyond tech, but one of the robbers manages to reactivate the warehouse's security measures. Taking you with me, you freak, the robber gasps, but Goblin leaps onto his glider as the drones swerve in to shoot him. Glorified RC planes! Throwing his own pumpkin bombs to destroy them. He blasts out of the warehouse as Spider-Man and Starling arrive. Hobgoblin? Spider-Man gasps. Spider-Man, what a lucky day! The villain shouts with joy. I haven't made this Spidey bleed in a while. I'll look forward to it. Hobgoblin shouts as he swoops in, launching into the fight. Spider-Man leaps out of the way, barely avoiding the attack, but Starling is there, slamming him into the wall. She knocks the criminal to the ground. You brought the new vulture, too! It's Starling, you wacko! Tiana snaps. Starling, we can't do this here. Too many people are gonna get hurt. We need to get him back outside. Spidey shouts as the onlookers from the festival begin to gather. Starling nods as the pair leap at Hobgoblin, knocking him back inside the Beyond warehouse. Yeah, you're not the only one with some help! Goblin shouts as the glider swoops in, slamming into Spidey's back. He tumbles to the floor as Starling rushes over to help him. She helps him up, and Spidey tells her that they need to keep Hobgoblin from getting his hands on Beyond's old tech. Hobgoblin wheels around, pulling out some pumpkin bombs. Don't know what the Beyond eggheads were using this tech for, but I can realize its true potential, he says as he spins his glider towards them, throwing the bombs. So I think it's time to take out the last of the pods and make room for the Queen! He shouts with the bombs arching through the air, with Spidey and Starling trying to leap out of their way as the entire warehouse goes up in flames. The floor gives way beneath Miles' feet, and he tumbles into the darkness below. As the smoke clears, Starling gets to her feet, dismayed to find the doors of the warehouse have been shuttered with the security lockdown. Gotta find Miles and get out of here, she whispers to herself as she moves through the debris, but something is moving behind her, and she suddenly whirls around, her eyes widening in shock. Wait, what the hell are... she begins to say. But before we see what she's looking at, we go elsewhere to find Miles himself in the Beyond tunnels beneath the warehouse. His costume torn, his body wounded. He begins to move forward, but his Spidey sense goes off, and he turns to web a drone to the wall. He realizes that his mental issues are still going on, and his Spidey senses are still going haywire. So he starts to ignore them, continuing to push forward, unaware that the Hobgoblin is right behind him with a pumpkin bomb. Miles is already feeling the effects of the sporadic Spidey sense. Being blasted away and separated from Starling certainly wasn't helping things. At that moment, a small tingle went off, and Miles turns back to deliver a venom blast. He is stomped as Hobgoblin grabs him, asking, "What's this? Your crude attempt at forming bioelectric weapons seems unrefined, just like you!" The fighting continues as Miles and Hobgoblin exchange blows, but with Miles getting more and more sluggish the longer the fight goes on, things aren't looking very promising for him, even with his new abilities to create basically lightsabers. Meanwhile, on the other side of the collapsed wall, Starling can hear a noise as a small automated robot wheels itself out. "Hello, human, I am Gar. How may I be of assistance?" Starling looks at it. "What the hell are you supposed to be?" And Gar explains that he is a guided asset recovery engine, and it would appear a piece of Beyond Incorporated property has been taken. "Would you know anything about it, human?" She says no, but if he can get her out of here, she can take him to the guy who does. Gar emoji face smiles. "Let's go!" Back on the other side of the wall, Miles brings out his latest weapon, the bioelectric sword, and even with that, Hobgoblin grabs him, kneeing him in the stomach. "You lack polish and discipline." After being knocked away, Miles says, "I'll show you polished!" And he webs up part of the ground, flinging himself forward, hitting Hobgoblin in the face with both feet. After webbing him up, Miles tells him, "My crazy meter's been going off all night," which is saying a lot, honestly. But Hobgoblin cackles as he ignites his hand to burn away the webbing. "You spider folk are all the same! Always trying to keep people safe, where I'm a certified death dealer." Miles could see something happening, but his spidey sense wasn't going off. And as Hobgoblin creates an explosion, the two are launched across the room into the walls. Hobgoblin is the first to get to his feet, telling him, "You either learn to get a handle on these things or they're gonna eat you alive." And then a voice tells him, "If you want to eat something..." Before he could react, Starling leaps in with a pipe, bashing it over Hobgoblin's head, telling Gar that this is who is trying to steal Beyond Incorporation's secrets. "You don't like that, right?" Gar's emoji face turns from happy to angry. "I certainly do not." As Gar takes over the fighting, Starling hurries over to Miles, and he asks her, "What is that thing?" "Oh, that's Gar. It's about all I got out of him. Now shake it off. Let's get this guy out of your hair." Hobgoblin punches Gar in the head, yelling, "You're gonna need more fight than this. I'm on a mission, and I have to see it through." As Hobgoblin begins to throw more bombs, Spidey rounds them up in webbing, while Starling flies in, kicking Hobgoblin in the stomach with both feet, knocking him through a wall. Hobgoblin gets back up. "I'm growing tired of this!" And at that point, it's Miles' turn to attack, as Starling grabs a hold of some webbing and gives Miles a boost, launching him right at Hobgoblin. There's a loud crack as Miles' feet break the ribs of the Hobgoblin, bringing him down. But as he tries to crawl away, "Can't leave without it." Starling says that thing lets him rewrite minds on a whim. "We're not letting you get out of here with that." "Right. What she said," Miles tells him. Hobgoblin reaches out for the mind-rewriting device. "You won't keep me from this. You won't keep me from the real fight." Miles stops. "What fight?" "Oh, you'll know soon enough," Hobgoblin says, igniting several pumpkin bombs, enough to level the entire building. Miles freezes, trying to hone in on his spidey sense, but Starling rockets upwards, grabbing him. "We gotta move!" The building explodes outwards, and Starling lands. Jeez! How can you spider people deal with all these weirdos all the time? But when she gets no answer, she looks around, asking, where did Miles go? She hears sobbing off in the distance. She hurries over, seeing him on his knees. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" And Miles is just crying. "I don't know what's wrong with me. What is even happening? My spider sense isn't working, and it almost got us killed." She wipes away the tears. "It'll be okay. Just tell me what you need." I really think I just need help," Miles tells her. "It's just so much has happened to me, to us. It's all just hitting me." So she helps him up. "It's okay. We'll get you some help. And we'll probably do it away from all of this because it sounds like the cops will be here in a minute." Miles webs up. "Yeah, and if Agent Gao or any of those cape killers are with them, there's no way we won't be brought up on vigilante charges." So later, on a much quieter rooftop, Starling says that between them, Misty, and some other super person in the city, they can find someone more suited to handle these problems. Maybe Miles shouldn't be getting involved and he just needs to relax. Miles nods, telling her, yeah, he'd like that. It's just so scary starting the process. She leans on him, telling him, yeah, fighting a psycho with a glider throwing pumpkin bombs wasn't exactly easy work either, but we'll make it. All you have to do is take your time. We ain't in any rush to go anywhere. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Hobgoblin pulls himself out of the wreckage, bloodied, holding the device. I need to get back to my place. I need to be among their ranks before I unlock my true strength. My purpose. I can hear it loud and clear. They wanted this tech so that they may tighten their grip on my mind, dissolve my mind deeper into their chorus. They made me forget so much, but the quiet, the peace, before their screaming, could not be erased this time, not entirely. But another voice cuts through the song of lies. From the past, my mind that remained protected, faintly aware of their influence. The last ember of flame kicking for its freedom. The voice of Roderick Kingsley, the Hobgoblin finally free from your cage thanks to the very device you coveted for yourself. This is just the first battle won, and consider this my declaration of war. With everything going on in Miles' life, he needed to take a step back and collect himself. After barely scraping by the fight against Carnage, as well as battling against Rabble, Miles' spider sense has been kicked into overdrive, and it's been warning him about threats that aren't really threats. But today is the day that he's going to take his girlfriend, Starling's advice. Today is the day that Miles Morales goes to therapy. After webbing up his way across Brooklyn, Miles enters into one of Misty's hideouts to get himself a bit of privacy. However, the individual that appeared on the holo projector gave him a bit of a shock. Doc Samson suddenly appears in his giant green Sasquatch form, telling him that he's sorry for being a little late. He was having a bit of trouble establishing a good connection from where he's at. He goes on to explain that he spoke with Misty and she mentioned that he was looking for some help. But before they begin, should he refer to him as Spider-Man or something else? Miles stares at the projection for a moment, his mask off and his identity out in the open. But it's Doc Samson that explains that currently they're blurring his actual face, so he doesn't know. So Miles explains that Spider-Man would be fine, and Samson laughs. You got it. No need to worry about your identity. There's a built-in privacy scrambler making your face unrecognizable. Now, it says here that you've been having issues with your powers. Miles looks at him. Yeah, well, really just one in particular. My spider sense. Samson gives a light laugh, telling him that he's known a few spider people, and from what he understands, that's completely normal. Miles looks at him. Really? It's just I've been through so much over the past few months, and the things that used to work, they suddenly don't. Samson tells him that it's also normal. Sometimes as their trauma and problems grow stronger, so do the methods at which they combat them. So how about they try something new? Some stress management exercises, breathing. Just relax, inhale, then exhale. Begin when you're ready, Spider-Man. Miles takes a moment to settle himself in, and as he does, he takes in a deep breath, holds it, and then exhales. After a few more times, Samson tells him that he did wonderfully. How do you feel? And to Miles' surprise, he tells him centered, focused. Lighter? I'm not completely fixed, but this is as normal as I've felt in a long time. Samson begins to laugh, telling him that it's a great first step. This exercise isn't an answer, but it's used more as an anchor. It's a means of calming the mind so that one might focus. Miles asks if it's because he lacks focus, and Samson says no. From the sounds of it, he has too much focus. It appears that he's worried that he won't have enough time to react. But you spider people are specifically built to deal with that, thanks to the innate precognitive nature of your spider sense ability. The two talk a bit more, but at the end of it, Samson says that he thankfully came to him looking for help, and they'll get to talk more about it soon. As the projection fades, Miles sits back. Okay, that wasn't so bad. Maybe this is something I can get into. He begins to head back home, but his spider sense goes off again. At first in one spot, then another, then another. Before panic has time to set in, Miles stops. He breathes, and as he does, he concentrates on the specific location. And when he does, he realizes whatever it is aiming right for his web. He begins to feel himself falling as the convict speedster, Hightail, runs across the building using a knife to cut through the webbing that is holding Miles up. Miles catches himself. Hey, it's Speed Lady! And Hightail tells him that Agent Gao wants to keep extra close tabs on him. All he has to do is keep his nose clean and they'll be fine. Miles looks at her. Look, I get the Cape Killers are doing some quid pro quo stuff, but I'm just minding my own business over here. I'm not even doing vigilante stuff. She stops. Really? Then why are you running around with your mask on? Okay, I was really hoping to avoid this, Hightail. Hightail looks at him. What? What are you trying to avoid? Miles starts to web her down, but she effortlessly leans to the side at super speed. Did you really try that? Stupid! And she launches a supersonic kick that Miles hardly has time to defend against. After a few more blows, Miles falls backwards, and Hightail says that he ain't running from this. He laughs. Ha, you're right. I'm not. At that moment, Hightail notices the webbing that Miles is holding is attached to her back. I already know from Scorpion that you can't kill me, so how about we start over? Hightail tells him that Gargan might be right about that, but she needs to remind him she's not like the others. Before even finishing her sentence, Hightail then takes off, dragging Miles behind her as she begins to bounce off flagpoles, AC units, and even pigeons before he's suddenly flung off of another rooftop. Miles tumbles, jumping up. Why can't a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man catch a break around here? And Hightail holds out her cuffs. Sorry, but I have my own stuff to handle. Okay, fine. But one last thing I should tell you before we do this. And what is that, Spider-Man? Miles activates his camouflage. I can do this! And he fires a ball of webbing into her face. She screams in rage as she rips the webbing off. I am going to kill that kid! And even with her super speed, Miles finally manages to catch a break as he jumps onto a passing train. A little while later, Miles climbs back into his apartment, finally free of Hightail. He grabs a snack and remembers, or rather, smells, something he forgot to take care of. The trash. He grabs the bag of trash, heading outside to throw it away, but his spider sense skyrockets again. A shadowy figure jumps out of the back, and Miles creates his Venom Saber, swinging it, cutting off the attacker's arm. He looks down. Oh god, I'm so sorry. I thought you'd be stronger than that. I'm still figuring out this whole sword thing and... Suddenly, the attacker's arm grows back with a gross squelching sound, and Miles stares at it. Oh, phew, almost had me there. The red-eyed vampire lunges once more, but he's stopped as two swords stab him from behind. As the vampire falls to the ground, Blade steps forward. You're gonna need to strengthen up that stomach, boy, because you're about to enter a whole new world. And Bloodline, his daughter, pokes out. Try not to mind my dad too much. He just likes to make an entrance. Miles looks down at the vampire at his feet. Is that a vampire? Because Blade only shows up when they're vampires, he says as he looks at Bree and Blade. Damn, Dad, he's kind of got you pegged, Bree says with a laugh. Miles is shocked as he realizes that Bree is Blade's daughter, and he leans over the vampire's corpse. My family just moved in. This thing has been under my nose the whole time, but Blade shakes his head. This vampire's a recent turn. Do you see these marks in the vampire's neck? They're recent marks. They look like suction marks. Not every type of bloodsucker uses fangs to drain folk. Blade explains, and Miles stands up, his mind reeling. Man, I just wanted to take out the trash. Now I got Blade telling me that there's vampire leeches running around here? He lets out a long, exasperated sigh, and Blade nods, explaining that these vampires feed off energy and siphon it to a master vampire that hides in its nest. This vampire is known as a Rim, the insatiable one that cannot be killed, only contained. I think he's settled somewhere around here, Bree begins to explain, and Miles nods as he looks back to Blade, informing the vampire hunter that if there is a vampire problem in Brooklyn, he wants to help. Yeah, we need all the help we can get, Blade says simply, surprising Miles, who expected more pushback on him joining up. Man, what a better way to celebrate Halloween than hunting ancient horrors, am I right? Miles jokes, and Blade steps forward, informing the young hero that the first thing that they need to do is change up that costume. He holds up his hands, casting a spell on Miles that transforms his clothes, giving him his own vampire hunting costume. Blade informs Miles that his webbing is now infused with anti-vampire magic. Cool, let's do this, he shouts with joy. The trio quickly make their way through the streets of Brooklyn, where they track the next vampire to a group of trick-or-treaters. The monster lunges at the group of kids, but Blade stops him with the UV headlights on his car. Oh snap, look out, monster! There's a Spider-Man about to kick you in the face. Miles jokes as he swings in, kicking the stunned monster away. Bree rushes in, slicing the vampire across the back with her sword. That also knocks it down, and then wounded, the creature lunges into the night. Let it lead us back to its nest, Bree shouts as she and Miles give chase, but they're both surprised as the creatures quickly scale a nearby building to escape. With a screech of rubber, Blade pulls up next to them and orders his daughter to get inside. Miles leaps into the air, trying to keep up with the vampire. He watches as he leaps from building to building, falling into an abandoned subway entrance. The trio quickly head down into the darkness. I can't believe these things were living this close and I never noticed. Miles whispers, but Bree quickly follows the monster, with Miles' spider sense suddenly kicking in. He shouts for Bree to stop as the three of them all round the corner, discovering the Rim hanging in the abandoned subway platform. The scent. I haven't smelled it in a long time, the massive vampire growls. The monster opens up his eyes, staring at Blade. Dampierre, the monster hisses. Blade draws his sword, but the Rim is already moving, and in a flash of motion, it stands before Bree. A child, you've gotten soft, Dampierre. The Rim snarls before knocking Bree away, but Blade is there kicking the monster again. He then turns to Bree as Miles helps her to her feet. You okay, baby girl? He asks, and the trio turn to the master vampire. We can beat this guy, right? And Rim smiles at them. Be wary, vampire hunter, for the night is still young. There is much blood yet to be spilled. Meanwhile, on the streets above, Hightail is moving through the streets at super speed, leaving behind a trail of light as she hunts for Miles, swearing to get her revenge on the young hero. But she stops as she nears the abandoned subway, finding leftover strands from Miles' webbing. Back on the subway platform, the trio of vampire hunters are battling against the minions, Blade locking his swords against Rim's claws as the vampire snarls at him. Do not fight this, Dampierre. Let the reign of Rim begin. The humans have no need for free will, the monster says, but Blade twists his blade underneath another attack, stabbing the monster in the chest. How about this? Just because your ass is immortal doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Blade snaps, and then he stalks forward, beginning to recite the spell that will trap the ancient vampire. But there's a sudden crash as Hightail appears in the subway. Spider-Man! I told you I'd find you! She shouts. Miles looks up in shock as he knocks away another vampire. Hightail? Yo, you gotta be kidding me! But Hightail's arrival has now broken Blade's incantation, so the vampires rush her. But at that moment, the speedster grabs one of Bree's daggers and begins to cut through the monsters. When she finally stops, the vampires are dismembered on the ground. I think I'm gonna be sick. Miles is choking, and Rim looks at the speedster. What manner of creature are you? Hightail rushes at him, furious that she was called a creature. She slashes at him with the dagger in super speed, but the vampire master quickly heals and laughs at her. Yes, this is what I needed. I will add you to my collection. You will be the best of them. He laughs, and as Hightail rushes him again, dagger slashing, Rim manages to grab a hold of her, pulling her in close. Let me go, you freak! She gasps out, but Rim merely laughs as he opens up his mouth, letting out a massive tentacle that slips out, latching onto her throat. We can't let the speedster get turned, Bree! You have to take her down now! Blade shouts as they all rush forward, but Miles stops Blade's weapons with his webbing. Wait, no way! We're not doing that! We gotta find another way! There's always another way! Miles snaps and Blade glares. You entered my world, kid, which means sometimes you gotta leave that hero shit at the door. But the heroes are all knocked aside as Rim rushes past them, and when they manage to get to their feet, Miles moves to check on Hightail. But Blade pushes him back. Look closer, kid. She ain't the one who needs saving. Hightail staggers to her feet, dizzy from the change. Rim's voice in her head. Blade steps forward in front of his daughter, ordering her to take Miles and run. But Miles' spider sense has already begun to go crazy as Bree is refusing, readying her daggers. Now, Pop, you know I'm too damn hard-headed to do that. What's that danger sense telling you, Spider-Man? But Miles is shaking his head. Something bad's coming. Something really, really bad. He begins to activate his venom blade. And the trio look up as a vampire Hightail rushes at them, promising to kill Spider-Man. I told you I'd find you, Arachnizo! And I always keep my words. Meanwhile, Hightail is charging through the streets of Brooklyn, dragging Miles behind her. But he manages to twist out of her grasp, firing webbing to try and slow the speedster down. I'm gonna rip your throat out, boy! She snarls, and they stop briefly as she throws rapid-fire kicks and punches at him. I know you're still in there, Hightail! He uses his webbing to soften her blows, and he twists under her attacks, believing that her super sped-up metabolism might be able to push the vampire infection out of her system if he can distract her long enough. But you're probably wondering how Miles got here. There's a gang war brewing in the Spider-Man comics, and all of the Spider-Man-related books are being brought in. But what could be so interesting as to drag Miles into this? Well, the return of the Prowler, of course. Today we're going to be covering issues 12 to 16. Issue 12 actually resolves the vampire plot from before, and then it goes into the gang war. I'm just making sure that we cover all of the Miles' issues for you guys. This is Comicstorian. I take comic books, turn them into audio drama so that you can keep up with your favorite plots, including Miles Morales and the return of Prowler. But first, let's wrap up that vampire plotline so we can go into that. The newly created vampire Hightail rushes at Miles at super speed, baring her fangs. "I told you I'd find you, Arnito, and I always keep my word!" she hisses, but Blade is there using a relic that saps the power over her for a moment. "Not tonight, sucker!" Blade snaps. Hightail hisses, retreating back to the side of her vampire god. Ramir smiles at the trio of vampire hunters. "How glorious! A creature of such potential. What grand plans I shall make. She will be my herald of death. Her speed will allow me unfathomable reach. I will become a whole once again." He rumbles, and Blade draws his swords, moving forward, ignoring Miles' calls for him not to kill anyone. "I can talk to her! I can save her!" Miles shouts, but in a blur of motion, he's gone. "Miles!" Brielle shouts, but she turns to Ramir, and his army of vampires charges at them. "You have bigger things to worry about," he hisses at her. Blade and Brielle leap into the fight, their swords flashing as they cut through the charging vampires. Blade dips under an attack and slices Ramir across the ribs, whirling around as the blood begins to flow out of the vampire. But the wound heals just as quickly, and the vampire god smiles. "Cut, hack, stab, and slash as much as you'd like. The wounds heal and flesh returns. Can the same be said about you, Daywalker?" Meanwhile, Hightail is charging through the streets of Brooklyn, dragging Miles behind her. But he manages to twist out of her grasp, firing webbing to try and slow the speedster down. "I'm gonna rip your throat out, boy!" she snarls, and they stop briefly as she throws rapid-fire kicks and punches at him. "I know you're still in there, Hightail!" He uses his webbing to soften her blows, and he twists under her attacks, believing that her super sped-up metabolism might be able to push the vampire infection out of her system if he can distract her long enough. As she turns, seeing a Halloween celebration taking place down the street. "Well, would you look at that? Looks like we found an energy buffet," she says as she dashes forward, but Miles manages to wrap his webbing around her, forcing her arms to her sides. "Miss Hightail, we weren't done talking. I got a few points about why you shouldn't hurt these people. Reason number one is you shouldn't be a vampire menace," he jokes. But even with her arms pinned to her side, Hightail is still too fast, beginning to run into the crowd and quickly bite people. Miles leaps up, tying up the group of newly formed vampires before they can do any damage. As Hightail then tries to dash away, Miles webs his feet to the ground, trying to slow her down. Finally, he calls her out for running away, pointing out that maybe she isn't built to throw hands. Hightail whirls and rushes back at him, easily dodging out of the way of Miles' attacks. "You think you can hit me? Who needs these losers when I've got a living battery right here?" she says as she appears behind him, prepared to bite into his neck. But Miles hits himself with his own venom blast, sending a shock of electricity through his body and into hers. Hightail screams in pain, falling to the ground. What the hell happened?" she gasps, momentarily pushing Ramir's presence out of her mind. Miles tries to talk her through it, but the vampire's control quickly returns. "I'll bring him your head!" she snarls, but Miles hits her with another blast of venom, throwing her to the ground, knocking her unconscious this time. Meanwhile, Blade and Brielle continue to fight against Ramir's forces, but with the god so close, the vampires quickly heal and return to the fight. Blade charges at the vampire god, ignoring his wounds as he slashes and stabs at the monster. He slams him into a wall, peppering him with silver stakes, but Ramir quickly pushes through them, his body quickly healing. "I am Ramir, the Immortal!" the monster bellows. Blade slashes through one of the vampires, throwing his sword, and he stabs into Ramir's head. But the monster isn't fazed. "I won't kill you, Daywalker. I'll start with your kin. Maybe I'll turn them and have them be my cupbearer." "That plan sounds a little whack to me," Miles says as he swings back into the fight, kicking Ramir in the head, knocking him away. Miles then leaps down, helping his friend to her feet. "You good?" And Brielle rubs her wounds. "Head's gonna be ringing for a week, but yeah." Blade charges over to them, taking out the relic that will seal him away forever. "Keep him busy long enough for me to seal his ass away for good," Blade orders the young vampire hunters. Ramir rises out of the rubble of the building that Miles kicked him into. Daywalker. I grow tired of this, he growls. But Miles and Brielle leap into battle with the monster as Blade begins to work the spell. Maybe a big sleepy vampire king needs to take a nap, Brielle shouts as she stabs her sword into his back. With that moment, Miles webs up his arms and punches him in the face. Finally, Blade finishes the spell, and the vampire god is sucked into the relic, disappearing in a flash of light. No! He screams as he disappears. With the smoke clearing, Blade is holding the relic. Got you, he whispers. Miles looks around, glad to see all that Romeo turned has become human once again. He then looks at Blade, who stuffs the relic into his coat. You just gonna keep that thing in your jacket all loose? He wonders, but Blade shakes his head. No, I got a special place for this, away from prying eyes. Later, Blade drives Miles back to his neighborhood, promising Brielle that he will always be there for her. They then look in the backseat, surprised that Miles passed out from exhaustion. I guess all those venom blast things really took it out of him, Brielle notes. With that, Miles will need his rest, because New York City is about to become a war zone for the crime lords. And the one who has his eyes on Brooklyn, an old villain of Miles, the Hobgoblin. As gang war has set New York ablaze, Miles Morales has joined Spider-Man's team to fight against the criminal armies throughout the city. But various boroughs were all under siege, and Miles rushed to help the people of Brooklyn. Now he swings through the streets and is shocked as he runs straight into a snowstorm. Snow? This time of year? And only on this block? Something tells me my day is about to get very long. Miles sighs, rounding a corner to find a costumed army duking it out on the street. You gotta be kidding me. These guys? Miles shouts as he finds the Buzz Boys, led by Bumbler and Warring Wasp and the Frost Pharaoh fighting in the streets. Blasts from the Buzz Boys' laser guns and Frost Pharaohs rip across the streets, forcing the civilians to run and dodge. A little girl falls into the icy street, so Miles swings down to give her a hand. You idiots are going to get somebody killed! Spidey shouts as he pulls the girl to safety, passing her off to her father. A Buzz Boy grenade then flies through the air, but Miles whirls around, webbing it up, throwing it high into the air where it can detonate with minimum damage. What the hell? You get our new gear, Bumbler? We're not trying to nuke the whole block, one of the Buzz Boys shouts to the leader. Miles leaps down into the Buzz Boys, knocking them out quickly as he whirls around them and pulls their weapons and gear out of their hands. More of the Buzz Boys then rush forward, led by Bumbler. I got some new tricks up my sleeve, Spider-Man, the Bumbler shouts as the criminals raise their new weapons. Miles nods and creates his Venom sword. Dang, you're not gonna believe this, but you're not the only one who's gotten an upgrade, Miles jokes, charging forward, dodging under the Buzz Boys' energy blast, slashing through their new rifles. Shoot them, you idiots! Bumbler shouts, but the Warring Wasp flies forward, rushing Miles. Let me handle this, she shouts, so Miles whirls back on her. Oh no! Will the D-lister whose name I just didn't bother to learn be the one to take me out? He jokes as he simply dodges her attack, allowing her to fly straight into the Bumbler. Dang! Guess not! Miles laughs, the two D-list villains gathering themselves and charging at Spider-Man. We can do this! We're the Buzz Boys! They shout, but Miles nimbly dodges their attacks, drawing out his Venom sword, slashing through their wings, sending them both plummeting to the ground. Yeah, well, I'm Spider-Man, he says, and then Miles quickly webs them up to the nearby dumpster and turns back to the storm. That takes care of the bees. Now to just find out where did Frost Pharaoh go? He says, and his eyes widen as he looks up at Frost Pharaoh's giant Egyptian mecha that seems to have come out of nowhere. Where did he get a Gundam? Miles wonders. The giant mech fires an ice blast at Miles, forcing him to leap into the air and swing around to dodge the attack. He flies through the air, drawing his Venom sword and going for the mech's head. Frost, my man, let's talk this out, Miles yells, but the Pharaoh fires another ice blast that sends Miles flying, freezing his web shooters in the process. No more running, Spider. I'm going to end this, the Pharaoh shouts as the mech charges forward. I can't hear you down there. Have you tried unplugging and plugging back in your mech? Miles shouts over the storm, and below them there's a screech of towers as Misty Knight brings her muscle car to a screeching stop, which sends Colleen Wing flying towards the mech with her swords. All I'm asking is for 1 week to go by where I don't have to save your butt, Spider-Man, Misty shouts as she fires her gun. Colleen leaps into the fight and Misty grabs Miles, pulling him to the safety behind her car. Colleen then stabs one of her swords through the mech's armor, but a powerful arm swings out, knocking her away. The Frost Pharaoh laughs over his radio. First, I'll crush the Brooklyn Spider-Man and his sidekicks, and then I'll turn the whole borough into the first lands of my dynasty. He laughs, but Misty and Colleen stand up in anger. Sidekicks! They both shout. Miles' web shooters have thought out and he has a plan. He leaps back into the fight, shooting the webs into the mech's eyes, blinding it. And after that, he swings around, reaching for Colleen's sword. No, don't you dare! The Pharaoh shouts, but Miles shakes his head as he grabs the metal. Sorry, I can't hear you. This venom blast is just too dang loud, Miles says as he sends a blast of energy through the sword and into the mech, destroying it in one blast. Moments later, the three heroes pull themselves from the debris of the destroyed mech and snowstorm. Man, I have snow in places I didn't even know existed. He groans, but a voice calls out to him. If you need a warm place to warm up, Arenito, might I suggest the back of a squad car? Hightail asks as she, Scorpion, and Gus walk through the destruction. The Cape Killers are here to help clean up the city, though Hightail isn't sure if she should just bring in Spider-Man now. Miles puts up his hands trying to hold off another fight with the Vigilante Squad. Now's not the time to be tied up with beef from the past, because the way I see it, we're gonna need all the help we can get, he tells her. Unknown to them, the Hobgoblin is moving through the borough. He holds a briefcase of money and is offering a partnership to a shadowy figure. I need you to help me with a little spider problem, Hobgoblin says with a vicious smile. The Prowler leans forward, nodding. I'm something of a spider expert myself. While the gang war rages throughout New York City, the enforcers have arrived at the mysterious warehouse somewhere in Brooklyn. The trio marvel at the tech scattered around the workstations until a shadowy figure finally speaks to them. Serious digs for serious work. And serious is something the enforcers haven't been taken in a while, Montana. This can change things, Prowler says as he steps out of the shadows holding a high-tech briefcase. Montana spits onto the floor, pointing out that the promise of high-tech weapons to help the Hobgoblin sounds too good to be true. If Hobgoblin figures that we're so useless, then why does he see fit to bring us in? Montana asks and Ox nods, pointing out that they could just carve their own piece in New York. They all whirl around in surprise as the Hobgoblin swoops in on his glider, laughing maniacally. If you'd like to make a play, fellas, there's no time like the present, Hobgoblin hisses. Prowler nods up at his boss. Good deal's a good deal. Why don't you take a look before making a decision? Might play out better for you, Prowler says. So Montana looks in the case and marvels at the weapons. He glances up at Prowler, accepting the deal. What do you want in exchange? He asks. Prowler narrows his eyes at the enforcers. That's easy. Kill Spider-Man. Meanwhile, over in Brooklyn, Miles just defeated the Frost Pharaoh and Bumbler with the aid of Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. But the arrival of Agent Gao's Cape Killers squad has caused a bit of an issue. You know, one of these days, we're gonna have to talk things out, Miles says to Hightail. But she shakes her head and orders them to stand down, explaining that Agent Gao doesn't care about the gang war and wants the vigilantes brought in. So you're the one I gotta talk some sense into, Misty says as she steps up to Hightail, but the speedster moves, punching her in the face. A freaking speedster? I hate speedsters! Colleen shouts, drawing her sword. But before she can attack, a powerful gust of wind knocks her off her feet. Miles moves quickly, leaping out of the range of Scorpion's tail attack. Guess it's just you and me again, kid. Real shame, cause it ain't personal, Scorpion says, so Miles leaps over another blow, firing a web blast into Scorpion's face. Scorp, man, we had a whole team up against Carnage! Don't do me like this! Miles shouts out. Gus continues hitting the area with wind blasts, but she doesn't have perfect control of her powers, sending Hightail to the ground. Gao should have kept you in the slammer instead of saddling you with us, Hightail snaps, but the wind dies down as Colleen comes up from behind the supercriminal, knocking her across the back of the head with her sword, dropping her to the ground. While Spider-Man continues to fight against Scorpion, Colleen and Misty are knocked against a nearby car, with Hightail moving fast, cuffing them both before they realize what's happened. Damn it! We're not the bad guys! Misty shouts as she stares down at the cuffs. Now all alone, the rest of the Cape Killers surround Spider-Man. Looks like you're all alone, Hightail says with a smile. Meanwhile, Miles' girlfriend Starling has been sent out by Miles to recruit more heroes to help. She slips inside of an old warehouse to find a massive creature wearing Miles' costume. Don't tell me you're the guy I'm looking for, right? Shift? She asks, and he nods. Glurp? He mutters. Starling shrugs. Come on, we gotta make one more stop. Back at Hobgoblin's warehouse, the criminal is watching the growing tensions and warfare throughout the city. Seeing the heroes are stretched too thin, he turns back to Prowler and the enforcers, telling them to head out into the city. I want to give her as much time as possible to perfect her prototypes, because once these designs are complete, the city is as good as mine. Prowler nods, flexing his new claws. You heard the man. Time for a field test, he says to the enforcers. Back in Brooklyn, Miles is slammed hard against a car. No hard feelings, kid, Scorpion says as he stalks forward, but they're stopped by Hightail's phone. Looks like the boss wants a check-in, she says, tapping the phone, and a hologram of Agent Gao appears. The agent glares at Miles, telling him that she is finally arresting him. But Miles gets his own call from Peter Parker Spider-Man, and he taps a button to take it. Yeah, I hate to interrupt, but we're kind of in the middle of saving the city, Spidey tries to tell Miles. Try telling the Cape Killers that! They're about to arrest me! Miles points out. So, Peter Parker shrugs, putting She-Hulk on the line. Everyone stands by while She-Hulk and Agent Gao begin to argue, with She-Hulk pointing out that Miles has been deputized by the mayor of the city to help stop the gang war taking place. Finally, Agent Gao relents, ordering Miles to fight alongside the Cape Killers, since they've gotten reports of the Hobgoblin working in Brooklyn, and she's going to be taking Wing and Knight in. Miles tries to argue, but Misty waves him away. Don't worry about us, kid. We'll be out in no time, she says as she's put in the back of a police van. Scorpion is then put in charge of the team while Hightail brings Misty and Colleen in. I'll be back, Spider-Man. Don't you worry. Hey, Gargan, try not to mess this up, Hightail shouts as she dashes away. The new team of Scorpion, Gust, and Spider-Man head off into Brooklyn to help stop the gang war, but it only takes a few blocks before they're attacked from above. Miles looks up in shock to see the enforcers now led by Prowler. Guess you ain't lost your edge, Spider-Man, Prowler says as he leaps down at his nephew. Miles tries to dive out of the way of the attack, kicking his uncle, demanding to know why he's taken the role of Prowler again. It's complicated. Prowler snaps as he whirls around, tossing several pumpkin bombs, but Miles webs them, tossing them back. Don't tell me you're working for Hobgoblin. This is low even for you. Trust me, it's gonna be good for us in the end. Meanwhile, Scorpion and Gust are staring down the enforcers. Ha! These guys are jobbers jobber! Scorpion laughs, and the group launches into a fight with each of them, with Gust taking out Fancy Dan before Ox grabs her by the head, beginning to squeeze. But Scorpion is there, knocking him away with a blast from his tail. Montana then prepares to draw on Gargan, but when he pulls out his pistol, Scorpion shoots it out of his hand, destroying it, and in moments the enforcers are all unconscious on the ground. Scorpion nudges Gust and smiles. Like I said, a jobber's jobber, he says with a smile. Meanwhile, Miles has drawn his Venom blade and is slashing at Prowler, but his uncle blocks the blow with his new tech gauntlet. Where did you get the tech? What's going on? Why are you doing this? Miles begins to shout, but Prowler pushes Miles away, trying to make his escape. Spider-Man follows him, demanding to know why he lied to everyone about being done with Prowler. Just listen, Prowler begins to say, but he's knocked off his feet by Gust's appearance. I've had about enough of you, Prowler says, firing a blast that knocks Gust to the ground. You're gonna pay for that, Scorpion says, whipping another blast out of his tail, but Prowler dodges it, punching him across the face. He then whirls back on Spider-Man, who is leaping at him with the Venom sword. Really doesn't have to be this way, nephew, Prowler growls, but Miles shakes his head and prepares to continue fighting. I'm not gonna let you or Hobgoblin take Brooklyn. If I'm the last hero here, I'm gonna stop you. But Miles isn't alone as a voice calls out from the nearby rooftops. Brooklyn might be tapped out, but I hear Jersey's still got a few heavy hitters. Miss Marvel says as she, Starling, and Shift are now joining the fight. In Brooklyn, Hobgoblin and Rabble begin to chase down a former scientist from beyond. The scientist has his security drones, but they're no longer listening to him, refusing to shoot Hobgoblin. Why aren't you listening to me, you useless pieces of junk? The scientist snaps as he tries to get through the security door into the warehouse. It's because machines only like to share their minds with people they respect, Rabble says, as she and Hobgoblin appear behind the scientist, the drones now fully under Rabble's control. Looks like you made a new friend. Real shame, Hobgoblin says with a smile. Rabble steps forward, demanding that the scientist give them the drive that they want. I can't do that. Maxine will have me killed, the man shouts, but Rabble glares at him, the drones hovering dangerously close to his face. So will I, she tells him, ordering the drones to aim. The drones move quickly, with Rabble retrieving the drive from the man's body. She plugs it into the system and motions to the hologram that appears before them. This will allow you to track Queen Goblin. Beyond saw her as a weapon, so they're tracking their IP. Rabble tells Hobgoblin, asking why he wants the Queen Goblin anyway. Let's just say, you aren't the only one with cloudy thoughts. Since you helped me, I'll keep my end of the bargain. Hobgoblin says as they fly away from the facility, allowing Beyond drones to explode behind them. But elsewhere, we get back to the Prowler, who's currently under attack from his nephew's friends. As he tries to avoid attacks from Miss Marvel, Shift, Starling, and Spider-Man himself, he tries desperately to reason with them. Damn it, stop for 1 second and let me talk, Uncle Aaron snaps. But Miles slams into him, slashing through his new tech with the Venom Saber, pushing Aaron against the wall. There, go on, talk, Miles snaps. Aaron reaches up, pulling off the Prowler mask, explaining the truth to his nephew, that he's undercover to try and stop Hobgoblin. I'm good, but I ain't taking on 4 supers at the same time good. I needed to put on a show while you took out the enforcers, Aaron says, explaining that he was approached by the new Hornet, Hobie Brown, who was the original Prowler. Hobie asked Aaron to take up the mantle of Prowler again so that he could get close to the Hobgoblin and figure out what the criminal's plan for Brooklyn was. So I made a promise. I linked up with Hobgoblin to see what he was about. Found out that he's got some weapons designer, Rabble. She's young and unhinged with unstable powers. Says that she's there because Hobgoblin said that he could help her with them. But I think there's more, Aaron tells him. Miles stares at his uncle for a moment. His friends gathering at his back, and finally he nods. Okay, we're gonna stop Hobgoblin and Rabble. Because if I don't put a stop to these guys, there's no telling what trouble they'll get into, Miles tells him. Back at their base, Rabble is struggling to fix the tech that Hobgoblin has given her. Her powers have been cloudy since their fight with Spider-Man, and the drones aren't fully listening. She begins to grow angry, shouting at the drones, trying to force them. Easy, Rabble, Hobgoblin says to her from the shadows, but she just grows more angry. Her eyes beginning to spark as she shouts at the drones, forcing them to listen. Finally they do, and the power armor begins to put itself back together. Hobgoblin comes forward, putting a hand on her shoulders. You got some spirit in you, girl. I'm gonna show you exactly what those gifts of yours can do. Nearby, Spider-Man and the team are moving through Brooklyn, heading towards the Hobgoblin's base, now teamed up with Gust and Scorpion from the Cape Killers to help take out the criminal and his allies. Landing on the nearby roof, Miles surveys the building. It's like Onk said, Hobbs got guards outside, but inside is just him and Rabble. Aaron then comes up behind him, bringing up a 3D version of the warehouse. Didn't have much time to map everything, but better than going in blind, he says, and Miles nods as he looks at the map. Once we're in, you can lead us to Hobgoblin's weapon, but it's not going to be easy, Miles says. Miss Marvel motions to the warehouse below them and the 5 super criminals standing guard. But Miles thinks that if Scorpion, Starling, and Shift can distract the guards outside, the rest will have an easier time slipping into the warehouse. Of course we have to do the hard-ass job, Scorpion grunts, and with that, the stealthy team moves away, with Miles wishing his friends good luck. Your boyfriend's really annoying, kid, Scorpion says to Starling. She raises an eyebrow. No comment, she says quietly, and with that, the loud team leaps down at the villains below. Can't believe we have to deal with these Z-listers, Scorpion snaps as he slams into Manbull. Shift then begins to move, but is hit by a blast from Shocker. Did Spider-Man get stung by bees? Lady Stiltman asks. Starling helps Shift get to his feet, and that's when Scorpion stands over them. Get your head in the game, kids! Time to earn our pay, Max snaps at him. Inside, the rest of the team is sneaking through the hallways, with Aaron ducking out in hopes that he can get the drop on Hobgoblin. Aaron looks at Gust and asks her to hang back just in case Miles and Kamala need backup. Alone for a moment, Miles suddenly turns, hugging Kamala. I'm so glad you're back, Kom. I thought, he whispers, glad that his friend is actually alive after her supposed death. She smiles at him. Aw, I'm glad I'm back too. But how about we do the real tearful reunion after we stop the baddie? They continue forward with Miles holding up a hand to stop Kamala. What are you doing? She asks quietly. Miles tells her that he's working on expanding his spider sense, but he needs to concentrate. So he pushes out his senses and suddenly gets a hit. He then turns, leaping back at his friend. Miss Marvel! He shouts as he knocks her out of the way of a drone attack. What are these things? Kamala asks as she slams into another drone. Another blast takes out the hallway, and the two heroes struggle out of the rubble. They both look up to see Hobgoblin and Rabble, now in new goblin-like armor, hovering over them. Spider-Man and Miss Marvel breaking into my base. Guess me and my new friend here will have to show you a warm welcome. Hobgoblin shouts as his laughter echoes throughout the warehouse. Miles struggles to his feet as Gus rushes in to help her new friends. Gus, Miss Marvel, behind me now! Miles shouts, and Rabble glares down at Spider-Man. He's mine! Miles looking up at her, powering up his Venom sword. Bring it, Rabble! Still mad about not getting into school? Miles asks her. She leaps at him with her own energy sword, and the two begin to clash. But Gus and Miss Marvel are there, knocking Rabble out of the air, slamming her into the ground. The villain jumps to her feet, 2 energy blades in her hands. If you want to stand between me and Spider-Man, then I'll cut you down as well! She hisses at him. And with a moment to breathe, Miles leaps at the Hobgoblin, slamming into him, hitting him again and again, bringing him down. Yes! This is the spider I wanted to face. What do you say we field test some new toys? Goblin shouts, and drones suddenly buzz around the room, firing energy beams that Miles can barely leap and twist around. Her drones are everywhere, Gust shouts as the drones buzz around all of the heroes. You should know by now, we're never alone! Rabble shouts as Spider-Man, while outside, Scorpion and the others continue to fight against Hobgoblin's criminal guards. But the 3 heroes don't prove strong enough to fight the 6 villains, and they're backed into a corner. But that's when Mac Gargan suddenly has an idea. As Shocker is preparing to hit him with a powerful blast, Gargan throws up his hands. Hold on a minute, he shouts, and Shocker pauses the attack. What are you doing? He asks. But Scorpion suggests that the criminals join him and his team. The rest of the criminals gather behind Shocker, who is shocked by this turn of events. Are you serious? Have you lost your mind, Mac? He asks, and Gargan just looks at him. Think about it. When's the last time a goblin, pick any color, has actually followed through with their promises? He asks. And then he suggests that they turn on Hobgoblin before he betrays them, offering to let them join the Cape Killers for this moment and have their records wiped clean. Scorpion shrugs, looking back at the rest of his group in question. Inside, Spidey, Gust, and Miss Marvel are desperately trying to hold their own against an army of drones that are buzzing around them. This is getting out of hand, Rabble! Miles shouts as he knocks another out of the air, but he whirls quickly as Rabble leaps at him, their energy blades meeting, sparking in combat. We have unfinished business! She shouts, and Miles tries to reason with her, that he understands that she is mad, and she feels like she was wronged. But he wants to help her. She hits him with a drone from the side, staggering. I don't want your help! I just want you to die! She bellows as she slams into him, knocking him across the warehouse. Meanwhile, Kamala Khan is trying to catch Hobgoblin, who is buzzing around her. Stay still! She shouts as she slams her fist into the ground, but Hobgoblin laughs at her. Come on now, the chase is the fun part. He whirls, throwing a pumpkin bomb at the ceiling, bringing it down on top of Kamala and Gust. But Spidey is there, shooting webs, grabbing the Rebel. Miles leaps up trying to catch Hobgoblin, but he's met by a new swarm of goblin drones. Goblin drones shows these kinds of folks what happens when you piss off a real death dealer. Hobgoblin orders, using Rabble's tech to control the drones. The drones swirl around the room, attacking the heroes who are barely able to fight back. Gus is barely able to keep it together while Spidey leaps to protect her, and that's when an explosion throws them both to the ground. The smoke clears as Hobgoblin is standing over the young heroes, his eyes glowing as he smiles broadly at them. Kamala cradling Gust's head. She's out cold, Spider-Man. We gotta get her some help, Kamala whispers, and Miles nods as Hobgoblin hovers towards them. Gonna miss doing this, Spider-Man. You were a pain in the ass, but I respected you, Hobgoblin sneers, motioning to his drones and ordering them to attack. Miles prepares himself, calling forth his Venom blade, the wall behind them suddenly exploding inward, and Scorpion charges in with his team of criminals. That's right, folks! Daddy Gargan is here to save the day! Scorpion shouts, and Starling sighs as she swoops through the air. We all agreed you wouldn't say that! As the new team leaps into the fight, they quickly begin to take the drones out. Get what you pay for, I guess. Rabble, some help would be nice. Hobgoblin shouts, but Rabble is already moving. She grabs a hold of the tech she was promised and, using her drones, flies to the exit. You served your purpose, Hobgoblin. There's nothing more I can learn from you. Madame Mask thanks you for your resources, and I'll be sure to put them to actual use. Rabble shouts over her shoulder. Anger bubbles up inside of Hobgoblin as he realizes that he was just betrayed in this gang war, and he begins to scream at her, shouting that he'll bury Mask and the rest of the scum that have betrayed him. A web shoots out, hitting his back, allowing Miles to yank him off his glider and kick him in the stomach. Dang, Hobgoblin! Starting to think you might be a kind of trash boss, Miles says as he slams the goblin into the ground. Hobgoblin wheezes from broken ribs as he crawls across the rubble strewn on the floor, and Miles stands over him. You're beat, bro. Just give up. Don't think you got many more ribs left for me to break. Hobgoblin rolls over and pulls out 2 pumpkin bombs. What makes you think I won't take the ship down with me? Spider-Man looks around and realizes that he is surrounded by boxes of pumpkin bombs. He whirls, moving quickly, shouting for the others to escape, and as the heroes and criminals escape the building, Hobgoblin smiles. Don't worry. I'll be seeing you real soon, kid. He whispers to himself before the building explodes. Later, the emergency services have arrived to put out the fires. Miles stands by as the EMTs wheel Gus away. Can't wait to tell my mom I saved the day with Spider-Man, she whispers, giving him a thumbs up. What are you talking about? I'm just trying to be like you, Miles tells her softly. But his comms buzz, and it's Peter Parker coming over the lines, telling Miles that Madame Mask and Beetle's armies are meeting in the Central Park to end the gang war, and he needs Miles' assistance. Miles turns to leave, but finds Agent Gao waiting for him. We took care of our part of the deal, so now that Brooklyn is safe, your truce with the Cape Killers is over, Gao says as their men are closing in. Gonna have to do this later, Gao. Spider-Man needs me, Spidey says as he swings away, but Starling and Shift step in the way of Gao and her men to prevent them from chasing him. We got this, Spider-Man. Go do your thing. Miles thanks her, leaping to swing away, heading off to help his friends. In the secret Roxxon lab that she has overtaken, Rabble shouts to her drones. She can't seem to understand them anymore. She can't talk to them or give protocols. Why don't the drones just talk to me? Why can't I hear you? She mutters as she continues to work, but a voice calls out to her as Roxxon security floods into the warehouse. They shout for her to stop, but Rabble just keeps talking to the drones. Take her down, the officer shouts, the guards opening fire. Defense protocol, Rabble shouts in response, the drones actually listening, leaping into the way of oncoming bullets. You will not stop me from fixing what is broken, Rabble bellows as she rushes forward, creating her energy sword slicing through the guards. The drones still aren't acting right, but the guards have all been killed. Several of the drones buzz around Rabble's head as he tries to shake away what's wrong with her. My powers haven't been the same since my fight with Spider-Man, she says to herself, referencing her time during the gang war. She reaches for the computer, finishing the download that she has started, and she picks up the data. Leaping onto the drones, she flies out of the building. I think this is what I need to finally get away to heal my powers, and Miles Morales will finally get his, she says as she roars off into the night. Meanwhile, over in Brooklyn, Miles is working alongside Miss Marvel and Shift, his clone, to fight against the laughably bad villain Zip Zephyr. As Miles and Kamala fight the wind-based villain, Shift is moving to help the trapped civilians. He catches a car that would have crushed them, but instead of being grateful, the people run in fear at the oversized Spider-Man. Shift shakes his head, turning back to the fight, leaping in and bringing down Zephyr with one final blow. Nice one, bro, Miles says, high-fiving his clone brother. Kamala makes her hand bigger so that she can also high-five Shift. Go team and biggin, she shouts with joy. Miles checks in on Shift, making sure that he's okay after the family was scared of him. You know I always got your back, right, Shift? Miles says, and Kamala agrees, trying to show Shift how he can morph the rest of his body, making his enlarged limbs smaller and more human-like. Shift manages to change, but only for a moment. You're struggling to hold it right now, which is totally normal, but with enough practice, you're going to get used to it, she tells him with a smile, pointing out that he should only change his shape when he wants to, not to please other people. Exactly, because from where we're standing, you look just perfect, Miles tells his clone brother. Meanwhile, across town at the mayor's office, Agent Gao stands before Mayor Cage, shocked that he is shutting down the Cape Killers team. You should be the last person that I need to convince what it's like out there, Mayor Cage, Gao says, but Luke shakes his head, explaining that since Fisk's anti-vigilante laws have been repealed, there is no need for Gao and her Cape Killers task force. Seems like after everything went down, it's even more apparent that the city needs a team to deal with all the threats. She points out, reminding Luke that he even took part of the gang war. But Luke explains that with the laws repealed, the heroes of the city will step up and protect them from the criminals and supervillains that want nothing more than to tear the city apart. With their discussion over, Gao storms out of the office. If the brass is too stupid to protect this city, then I'll have to figure out a way to do it myself. I've been on a leash for far too long, and I think it's time to do what needs to be done, Gao says as the elevator doors close. Later, Miles arrives at Misty Knight's secret hideout, where he's gathered his friends with a new idea how to stop his villain, Rabble. Alright, here's my presentation, Miles says as he motions to the screen on the wall behind him. Why are you turning my hideout into a kiddie clubhouse? Misty asks as she looks at the gathered teen heroes. Miles taps a button showing his detective board of Rabble and the villains that she's armed with her tech, telling his friends that he doesn't want to fight her, but reason with her and get her the help that she needs. My plan is to talk to her, he says, and Starling, his girlfriend, raises an eyebrow at this statement. That's a bad plan. But Miles disagrees. While he knows that Raneem doesn't like him, he feels that he needs to help her. If there's any way to help her, then I'm gonna try. We always have to try, he says, and Misty surveys Miles' board, nodding her head in approval. Not bad, newbie. Guess you've been paying attention. And how do you plan on tracking her down? Miles shrugs, suggesting that they talk to the people that she's armed. Misty nods again, turning to her junk drawer, pulling out a box of matches, tossing it to him. I think you know where to find them, she says, glancing at the matches, which say, The Bar with No Name. Yeah, I've heard of this bar. It's the go-to for every lowlife in the city, Miles muses, and Misty nods, explaining that they have a strict no-fighting policy. Miles smacks his hands together. Ha! I can work with that. It's time for us to start being a little more proactive, Miles says as his new team turns, posing for the camera. Meanwhile, Agent Gao has found herself moving throughout the shadows, her pistol in light, coming down as a drone suddenly buzzes out of the shadows. Why are you here? Rabble bellows as she appears, Gao raising her weapon, still prepared for the battle. Heard a lot about you. I'm impressed with your work. I guess I wanted to see the other side's perspective for once. Rabble? Later, Kamala, Miles, and Shift are chasing after Rabble's drones as they buzz through the streets, chasing after the Bumbler. Why are you coming after me? Bumbler shouts in frustration, whirling and firing his honey gun. I paid Rabble for her stupid upgrades already, he shouts as he fires, but the drones easily dodge around the attack and keep coming. The honey then blasts Miles, slamming into Kamala's chest. Ah, come on! I just got a new suit and you messing up with honey? Do you have any idea how hard it is to get honey out of polymorphic adaptive cotton? She shouts in anger. The drones continue their attack, slamming into Bumbler's head, knocking him to the ground. One continues to spark, rushing forward, about to explode. Shift! We gotta take the glowy boy out! Miles shouts as he fires his weapon, grabbing the drone and pulling it away just before it explodes into Bumbler's face. Dang, Bumbler, I guess this is what happens when you get cozy with a weapons dealer who doesn't like loose ends, Miles points out, and Miles turns to his friends questioning how unstable Rabble's drones have become. Yeah, the Hobgoblin said something about her powers being wonky. I guess this is the result, Kamala points out, and Shift raises his hand, pointing out that Bumbler is haphazardly flying away. He's covered a good distance for a guy who just got blown up, Miles points out, and they all look surprised to see the drones giving chase and flying off. Yeah, it looks like they lost interest, Kamala says. They follow the bee-themed villain through the city until they arrive at the bar with no name. Do you have a plan? Kamala asks as they watch Bumbler head inside. Miles nods. I'm thinking of one as we speak, and trust me, it's really good, he says as Kamala side-eyes him. Uh-huh, sure thing, she says with a smile. But Miles leaps off the rooftop, heading down to the entrance. Don't worry, guys, I got this. They don't call me the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man for nothing. Miles pushes open the door, walking into the bar, passing several low-level criminals in costume. He saunters up to the bar, stumbling over a few words about how he isn't looking for trouble. The bartender nods at him. Good, because our bar's got rules, the bartender says, but what he really peers at is the slim hero. Wait, how old are you? He motions to the sign nearby and reminds Miles that there are no minors allowed in the bar. Miles turns in disgrace, walking out. The rest of the criminals laughing at him as he leaves. Back on the rooftop, Kamala's rubbing her head. Why didn't you just say you were 21? Miles shakes his head. There's nothing friendly about a Spider-Man who lies, he points out. Reaching into his pocket, he pulls out his phone and dials Uncle Aaron. I got backup. 1 sec. Time to call in the big guns. Back at Rabble's base, Raneem is looking down on Gao. Don't know who told you I'm in the business of making deals, Agent Gao. Rabble says, but Gao shakes her head, pointing out that Rabble has been arming several different groups throughout the city. Rabble ponders this for a moment before spinning away on her drone. I'm having a hard time imagining what you could possibly bring to our partnership, Rabble tells Gao, who hesitates for a moment before following her. Legitimacy for one, a team full of criminals who are also hell-bent on taking out Spider-Man. Rabble nods, stepping off of her drone. I know all about your task force, Julia, she says, calling up hollow images of the Cape Killers. Gao explains that she believes that the heroes that protect the city are unreliable, and that they need to be reminded of that. Do I help you and you give me Spider-Man? Rabble asks, and Gao nods her head, pulling out a power-dampening collar from her pocket. She hands it to Rabble, who looks at it for a moment. I'll see what I can do. She finally agrees. Meanwhile, back at the bar with no name, Uncle Aaron has shown up as the Prowler. He orders a drink as he sits at the bar, glancing down the bar at Scorpion, who smiles at him. Prowler! Long time no punch! Mac Gargan says with a smile. Aaron stands up, asking if Scorpion wants to fight after the Hobgoblin business, but Mac shakes his head. Nah, I'm off the clock. Next one's on me. Mac offers. Aaron slides down next to him, questioning how he can get away from Agent Gao. They let me out sometimes. Must be on account of my many good behavior acts and shining personality. Mac jokes, and Prowler nods, continuing to drink, pointing out that he's surprised that Mac is even there, since he's one of the good guys now. Don't get twisted, I'm not a good guy, but I ain't all bad, Mac says as he finishes his drink, side-eyeing Prowler. Suppose I can thank your nephew for that. Aaron is surprised, but Mac explains that he heard Spider-Man refer to him as Unc during their last fight. Folks see me as nothing but muscle. Everyone except your nephew. Part of me would be lying if I said I didn't like the feeling I get from actually helping people. Mac says with a shrug, and Prowler nods his head. Yeah, Spidey sees the best in folks. It's why I'm trying to do right by him. Aaron admits, and Mac nods, laughing. Prowler's nephew is Spider-Man. Life is strange. The phone in his pocket suddenly buzzes and Mac gets to his feet. Well, boss is calling. Guess vacay's over. See you around, Prowler. Mac calls as he heads out of the door. Moments later, the door then flies back open as Bumbler comes out with glasses. He stops, looking at Prowler in fear. If you're gonna run, you better go on and do it, Prowler says as he finishes his drink, pulling up his hood. Bumbler turns. He runs for the door. He heads down the back alleyway with Prowler chasing, slamming him into the ground, demanding to know where Rabble is. I'm a busboy at the crime bar. You think she's dropping me a pin? Bumbler asks, and blood leaks from the hits that Aaron gives him. Aaron then leans in, grabbing Bumbler's arm. You're useless, but maybe a piece of your tech can tell me what I want to know. He snaps, pulling off a piece of the gear that Rabble gave Bumbler, allowing the lame criminal to run off. Spider-Man, I got a sample of Rabble tech, Aaron says, sending the scan across to his nephew. Back in Misty Knight's hideout, Miles uses the scan to begin pinging Rabble's signal throughout the city. Thanks, Unc. We got it from here. Don't get caught napping, nephew, Aaron says as he hangs up. Meanwhile, Raneem goes to visit her father, a man whose mind is failing him and can't even remember the face of his daughter when she sits next to him. Though her own powers are failing, Raneem promises her father that she will fix everything and that she's sorry that she can't fix him and couldn't fix their mother. Elsewhere in the city, the Cape Killers are on one of their final missions. A grenade flies across the street and Taskmaster easily ducks behind the car, Gust right behind him. Little birdie's really chirping today, huh, Gust? He says with a laugh as he readies his bow. How the heck are you so calm, Mr. Taskmaster? Gust stammers in fear, but Taskmaster shrugs. I fought Wolverine and Deadpool. This guy has a handlebar mustache and a bandana. This is light work. He says, stepping out, firing an arrow through one of the gunman's hands. Stop wasting time and bag these guys, Taskmaster, Gao says over the radio, reminding the team that the leader of the gang is able to suck energy from those with powers and make himself stronger. Hightail rushes in, preparing to stop the supercriminal, but her powers weaken as she gets closer. Almost snuck up on me, the leader says with a laugh as he grabs Hightail, throwing her into Scorpion. Gust tries flying in, but the leader turns on her and she drops out of the sky. That leaves it all up to Taskmaster, who flips over the destruction around them, tossing his shield from one criminal to the other, bouncing it off a car window and allowing it to slam into the superpowered criminal. With him temporarily stunned, Hightail rushes in, hitting him again and again in rapid succession, allowing Scorpion to rush it and slam the guy with his tail, bringing him down. Afterwards, as police and EMS secure the scene, Agent Gao orders her team to gather around. We got new orders. Taskmaster shakes his head. Are you sure about that? He explains to the others that as he understands it, with the anti-vigilante laws repealed, this team is being mothballed. The team looks at her angrily for putting them into the field when she knew that they were being shut down. Finally, Gao nods her head, reaching into her pocket, bringing out the collar that Rabble worked on for her. Rumors are true. As of tomorrow, the Cape Killers are done. But take this right here, do this last op, and I can have your sentences commuted at the stroke of midnight. Legal, legit, and squared. Mac just stares at the piece of equipment that she holds. Do you think that I'm dumb enough to put that thing on? Gao explains that the new collars will sever the mental blocks that stop the criminals from naturally hurting themselves while using their powers, which will allow them to be more powerful than ever before. So what? I run faster but can also possibly blow out my knees? What a deal, Hightail says with a shrug. Gao holds up a datapad, telling them that their final mission is to take out Spider-Man once and for all. This is our last dance, so we're gonna have to get dressed. Later, Miles is swinging across Brooklyn, trying to come up with a plan on what he's going to say to Rabble once he finds her. Suddenly, a blast of energy nearly takes him out, and Miles flips to safety to look at his attacker. By the Order of Powers Act, we are about to place you under arrest, and I'm begging you to resist, Gao says, surrounded by her new team with their Rabble-created armor. Miles' eyes widen in shock. Agent Gao? That tech, don't tell me you're working with Rabble, Miles says in surprise. He prepares for a fight, drawing his Venom Saber, but Hightail suddenly rushes at him, moving faster than ever before, kneeing him in the stomach and knocking him away. Gus hits him with a blast of wind that sends him flying. Sorry, Spider-Man, it's the only way I'll see my mom again, she apologizes. And next is Scorpion slamming into Spidey. I don't want it to be this way, kid, he says quietly as Taskmaster leaps in, hitting Miles with his shield. I'm not like these other losers, Spidey. I'm having a ball. Miles falls to the ground and Gao reveals her real plan. By giving Spider-Man to Rabble, she's going to provide a list of all superpowered criminals in the city. She gives the list to me, I put the scum in jail cells, and I keep the city safe. But none of the Cape Killers want to finish the job, so Taskmaster sighs, drawing his sword. I guess no one else is going to step up. I'll do the honors. Hope the other Spidey don't take this too hard, he says as he prepares to strike. But Miles is biding his time, charging up his Venom Strike. His fist cracks as he leaps up, hitting Taskmaster across the face, knocking him away. Taskmaster sails through the air, slamming into the ground. Both Hightail and Gust are shocked by Spidey's power, but Mac just shrugs. Oh, Spidey freaks pull their punches, trust me. Gao has finally had enough. Tapping a few buttons, she removes all restrictions on the power armor and collars, taking control of her team and ordering them to stop Spider-Man. Mac looks down in shock as the armor begins to move his body without his control. What the hell are you doing to me, Gao? He shouts, the Cape Killers all beginning to act against their own will, leaping in to bring down Spider-Man. Gust shouts for Spider-Man to watch out as she hits him with a gust of wind, and Hightail is there to kick him in the chest. Can't say I'm not enjoying this, she admits as Spider-Man falls to the ground, wind knocked out of him. Miles looks up as Scorpion approaches, his tail aimed to take Spider-Man's head off. Damn it, kid, I'm fighting the best I can, but this damn collar is too strong, Mac growls. Suddenly, the wall explodes behind him as a Rhino slams into Mac. The problem with you, Goggin, your fashion choices have always been terrible, Rhino says as he knocks Mac away. Gao is shocked by Rhino's appearance until Prowler steps through the destroyed wall with all of Miles' friends. Did you think that you're the only person who knows how to put together a team? Kamala smiles. You guys are so about to be beaten up. She cheers, Shift moving forward, helping Miles to his feet. Okay, brother. Miles is shocked, but Kamala explains that she gave him a few lessons on stretching his vocal cords. We can talk about it later, though, Kamala shouts as Hightail rushes at her, hitting her again and again, but Kamala takes the blows, punching Hightail away. The two teams leap into battle, with Gao promising Spider-Man that they're ending this tonight. As his friends begin to fight the Cape Killers, Miles then leaps at Agent Gao, demanding to know what she could possibly be thinking by teaming up with Rabble. This is how I know you've lost your mind, Gao, he says as he kicks her away. But the fight is interrupted as one of Rabble's drones flies in, floating before Spider-Man. We have unfinished business, and you will follow this drone to me. You will come alone, and we will end this once and for all, Rabble demands, Spider-Man looking at her image. Am I supposed to let Agent Gao's Cape Killers do their thing? Rabble shakes her head, initiating a command. Overclock protocol. Suddenly, all of the Cape Killers, including Gao, are completely taken over. Their armor beginning to power them fully, their brains beginning to scream. These people do not control their minds. I do, and they will do what I tell them until their nervous systems burn out. If you want to save them, you know where to go. Rabble tells him before ordering the Cape Killers into attack mode. The killers rush at Prowler's team, now even more powerful and completely unable to control their actions. Rabble, you have to stop this, please, Miles says as he watches his friends trying to survive the fight, but Rabble shakes her head. No telling how long their nervous systems are going to last, unless you save them, Mr. Hero, she taunts. Finally, Miles agrees, leaping away from the fight, following after the drone. He follows it quickly until he lands at Rabble's hideout. He looks up to see her approaching with her energy weapons, the drones spinning around her. Miles Morales, you have come here to die, so let it be done swiftly. Redeem, you need to let these people go now, Miles pleads, but Rabble rushes at him. Make me, she bellows, the two locking blades trading blows back and forth. It doesn't have to be like this, Miles shouts as he blocks another attack from her. Yes, it does, Redeem bellows as she hits him again, but Miles flips over her head and grabs her, slamming her hard into the ground. Fine, we'll do it your way, he growls, and Rabble gets to her feet quickly, her eyes glowing with power. There's more than one way to hurt you. Back at the fight, Scorpion suddenly whirls, hitting Shift with a blast from his tail at full power, bringing the clone to the ground. Kamala rushes to her new friend's side, begging for him to get up. I made a promise to Miles, and I'm keeping up my end of the bargain. You're gonna have to see this through to the end. She shouts at Shift, the drones beginning to whirl around her as she glares at Miles. Back with Rabble. I made a promise, Miles, and I'm keeping my end of the bargain. You're going to have to see this through to the end, she shouts, drones whirling around her as she glares at Miles with a crazed look in her eye, promising that the only way for him to stop her and save his friends is for him to kill her. Just strike here, right through the heart, and it'll all stop, Redeem says, freaking out, pointing to the glowing space on her armor, and Miles stares at her in shock. Redeem, you've gone insane, Miles whispers as she rushes at him, her drone slamming into him, knocking him to the ground. She leaps at him again, brandishing her energy blade. Die! She bellows in rage, their blades connecting, the backlash of energy knocking them apart. Rabble struggles to her feet. All your power, and you couldn't save the clone, she says, and Miles looks at her in shock as his comms cackle, and Kamala's voice comes over the wire. Spider-Man, Shift is down, he's not breathing. Miles is stunned, looking at the woman who hates him. No, he can't, you wouldn't, Redeem, he whispers, and Miles reaches up, pulling down his mask, dropping it to the floor as tears fall from his eyes. On your feet! If you want to finish this, then let's do the damn thing, because I promise you, you're never getting a better shot, Miles says as energy is crackling off of his body. He looks at her as he drops into a fighting stance, remembering what Misty and Colleen taught him. One last time. We don't have to do this. I can find someone to help you. Miles tries to talk to her, but Redeem, she shakes her head. Yeah, we do. We have to stop playing nice and see this through to the end, she tells him. So Miles nods, rushing forward, hitting her hard in the face. Bet! He growls, trading blows back and forth. As a drone comes out, knocking Miles into the wall, Redeem rushes at him, slicing forward with her energy blade, cutting into his leg, but they both stagger, exhausted from their battle. Swarm protocol, Redeem gasps, but Miles has had enough. He charges forward, slamming into the drones, breaking them, knocking them to the ground. He tries to hit Redeem with a venom blast, but she smiles, grabbing his hand, using Miles' own energy to power her suit. You've got so much power! Let me show you how to use it! As she brings his arm down to her knee, shattering him at the elbow until it feels like nothing, just jello and shards of bone. Miles screams in pain. He staggers away, but Redeem grabs him, throwing him through another wall. There's no need for screams, Miles. The machines can't comprehend that sound, but I'll do my best to teach them, for I am the envoy of death, and they will know well my works, she says, standing over Miles, her eyes crackling with the energy. She grabs him again, slamming him through another wall, but Miles twists this time, kicking her in the face and knocking her away. You've got a guy's energy and don't even know how to use it properly. Miles tries to joke, but Redeem gets up quickly. I already took your arm and your venom blast. How about your eyesight? The drones fly into the room, hitting Miles with a flashbang. Everything goes white. He's moving on pure instinct. Like the way it looks when you bleed, Miles, Redeem says as she slams into him again. Miles tries to get his bearings, but he can only see vague shapes in the room. He does know that Raneem is slamming him into the ceiling, so he grabs her by the waist, slamming her into the floor, bringing them down into the lower level. Enough of this! Raneem says as she struggles to her feet. Miles gasps for air. He's got no energy left. His arm is gone. Several ribs are broken. His breath is coming out in ragged gasps. He struggles to his feet, trying to remain calm, when suddenly he senses one of the dampening collars nearby. That's when he realizes that Gao brought the collar to Raneem to have her upgraded, and a plan begins to form. This is our last stand, Miles Morales, and I'm gonna make it count! Raneem shouts, charging at him. Miles shoots a web to grab the collar, but he doesn't hit Raneem. He attaches the collar to her. This shuts her powers down, and she stops short as her drones begin to wobble through the air, unsure of what to do. What's it? Why can't I hear their signals? Why can't I hear the machines? She gasps, demanding to know what Miles did, and he collapses. I'm sorry, Raneem. I may not be able to help you, but we'll find someone who can. He gasps, whirling from his place, kicking her across the room, knocking her out, and promising that this will all be all right. The fight is over. Miles gasps for breath as he struggles to his feet, dragging himself out of the hideout, ordering himself to keep going. Back at the fight, the Cape Killers suddenly fall to the ground. Their bodies, their minds, they're theirs again to control. Looks like Spidey did his good, Rhino says as he helps Gust and Hightail to their feet. How you doing, Gargan? Prowler says, standing over Scorpion, and Mac tries to stand but falls to the ground. Like I got hit by the Hulk. Guess I owe the run another IOU. The fight is over. Shift is helped to his feet by Kamala, severely wounded. He's already begun to heal. I can't believe you're still standing. You must heal quick like Spider-Man, Starling says with a smile. What can I say? Spider people are built different. Miles says as he struggles into the room, aided by Misty Knight and Luke Cage. Police and EMTs flood the scene, with everyone thanking Miles, who can barely stand at this point. Miles and Starling stand nearby, watching as the EMTs and police take Rabble into custody. We're gonna do our best to give her a fighting chance, Misty and Luke promise, and Miles nods. Too bad Agent Gao slipped away. But the conversation is interrupted as everyone turns to see Shift fighting against the EMT's help, not wanting to go back to a lab. Lab bad, lab hurt, don't take me back, he says, using his new abilities to speak almost properly. Miles rushes over to his clone brother, promising that he won't make him go to the hospital. But what if I told you we got a nurse at the family? A short time later, the Morales family is having a quiet evening, and it's interrupted as a severely wounded Miles comes into the door. Dios mio, what happened? His mother shouts as they all begin to fuss over him. I'm fine. My elbow's a little shattered and I have a couple of broken ribs, but I heal fast, Miles promised the family. There's something else, though. There's someone I want to introduce you all to, Miles says as he motions back to the door. Shift comes in, his face a warped version of Miles, his body huge, his arms oversized. He startles the family slightly. He looks around nervously as Miles explains Shift's past as his clone. But Billy, his sister, she has no issues. She reaches out her baby arms for the clone, and Shift reaches down to pick her up. Small before, big now, Shift says softly as he holds his baby sister. Finally, Miles' mom just sighs. Jeff, can you put on a pot of coffee? It's gonna be a long night. Miles looks at his clone with a smile. Well, Shift, welcome to the Morales family.
And there you have it, Miles Morales Spider-Man issues 1 through 19 by Cody Ziglar. What did you guys think of this Miles run? And how cool is that new sword? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, subscribe to the channel if you want more, as it helps us out a lot. I'm Dan with Comicstorian, and we will see you next time. Rest in peace, Benny.